Today is May 19th, 2024. Welcome to Native Calgarian. Oki, naganago mekoche chestokom aki, or dekots nagot tene siku. My name is Red Thunder Woman. My married English name is Michelle Robinson, and I use she, her, they, them pronouns. My Dene lineage roots me in the land of the Great Bear Lake tribe in Treaty 11. My people wore rabbit skin, so it's been referred to as the land of the hair people. I'm a native to Turtle Island, and my Dene Nation is uninvited to this area of Clincho Tine Indahe in Satu Dene, meaning Many Big Dog Town, named after the Calgary Stampede. I was born in Calgary or in Blackfoot, Mohkinstsis, as Michelle Elliott, an English name that has afforded me privilege in an English colonial world. Acknowledging proximity to whiteness is important because the darker the skin, the more racism a person experiences. My mother is Northern Slavey Dene or Satu Dene, but my Indian Act imposed status card by the Canadian government says Yellowknives Dene. Through my father, I'm a daughter of the Mayflower and a daughter of the American Revolution. Having a Canadian Indian Act imposed status card is a colonial construct by Canadian policies meant to divide Indigenous peoples' inherent rights. Indigenous Two Spirit, or the Indigenous to us LGBTQ community, and Indigenous women are at the bottom of the Canadian socioeconomic ladder because of colonial trauma, imposed poverty, racism, gendered violence, and land theft. According to the 2023 Quality of Life report from the Calgary Foundation, 31% of racialized Calgarians cannot find suitable employment. I'm not a social worker nor an elder, nor do I speak on behalf of all Indigenous, but I can share my journey as a Dene mother navigating this colonial, misogynistic, racist world in 2024. As a trauma-informed Dene woman who has attempted to run, joined harmful colonial parties, spent money to be at expensive conventions, left my home to travel to those conventions, just to vote on incomplete policies that still allows for incarceration, a denial of justice, denial of health services, racism, colonial trauma, and genocide of Indigenous and Black peoples, I have worked to continue reports to advocate for and attempt to work within these systems meant to harm me and my community. I think of all of this today, and I hope that we honor the many Indigenous lives lost for the so-called country named Canada. I hope you see your role in the importance of stopping harm, and as a citizen, see a role in reconciliation and as a treaty partner. Pride Month should never be 1 month. It is important to understand that the straight agenda and gendered violence was and is forced on these lands by Christian outsiders. Land acknowledgements are critical for creating a safer space for Indigenous, as well as honoring the host as a guest and acknowledging your role as a treaty partner in this so-called time of reconciliation. Can they be performative? Absolutely. It's important land acknowledgements have meaning. I encourage everyone to introduce themselves with their acknowledgement of their ancestors, stories of displacement, and how you perceive your role as a treaty partner, a citizen of Canada, a refugee, or other land displacement, so we as Indigenous peoples know how safe you are to be around. If you won't talk about the local nation's names, won't say your pronouns, won't say your story of origin, acknowledge stolen lands, acknowledge imposed economic oppression, or your role in reconciliation, I determine how safe you are to be around my community, my family, and myself, because we face the most colonial violence based on ignorance or worse, willful anti-Indigenous biases. Understanding land acknowledgements and their importance is Indigenous 101 because it immediately addresses colonialism, oppression dynamics, broken treaties taught today, every day in Canadian schools nationally. That's why settlers and those who call themselves Native Calgarians or whatever town you're from show me you have no Indigenous 101 understanding. Jesse Winty's book, Unreconciled, explains this perfectly, as do many Indigenous authored books. Land Back is a movement that could save the planet from climate change created by capitalism and colonialism, but it would also be a part of treaty partnerships, meaningful reconciliation, and honoring global initiatives like the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. I'm speaking to you on the lands of the Niitsitapi, which is the Blackfoot Confederacy. The Blackfoot south of the imposed US-Canadian border are the Blackfeet, or the Omska Bibi Gani, and north of the border are the Siksika, Kainai, and Piikani of the Confederacy. These lands are Treaty 7, signed September 22nd, 1877, with signatures that include the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Goodstoney, formerly Wesley, Chiniki, and Bearspaw nations of the Stoney Nation, or the Yiharhi Dakota Nations, and the Dene from Sutina. I acknowledge all First Nation, Métis, Inuit, status, and non status across Turtle Island as the keepers of these lands. All non Indigenous are treaty partners with the government signing on your behalf. My Patreon account is Native Calgarian, where you can pledge and support. Thank you, previous donors, for showing your support. If you value listening or watching and can afford to give, thank you. For those who cannot afford to give, I would love to hear from you at nativeyyc@gmail.com, where you can send in your comments or questions. Also, giving a review helps whatever medium you're listening from. I have a YouTube channel that you can go and subscribe. Go to nativecalgarian.com for the latest podcasts and pin posts on social media. And I'm excited today to have a wonderful guest that I met the other day. Would you like to introduce yourself in your way?
Okay, Tansi, ani apituashte. My name is Karrie-Lynn. Um, my original white last name is Sparvier. I was born in 1963. I'm from White Bear First Nation down in southeast Saskatchewan. Um, my traditional name is Chi Shingwak Wewe, which half of it is in Anishinaabe and half is in Lakota Yapi, which is Lakota Sioux. Um, so it means big pine tree standing tall against the wind. And so for short, it's big pine standing ready. So yeah, so that's my traditional last name. And I've been living in Calgary here for 21 years. Moved here in 2003. Um, and I'm here to share my story. My story starts back in 1963. I was 1 month old, and um, two RCMP officers and a social worker came onto the res and took me or apprehended me from my mother, who was just turned 16. She was in residential school and had gotten pregnant in residential school. And so she was sent home to uh, till the end of her pregnancy and given 1 month. And then after that, they came to take her back to residential school. And the Department of Social Services for Saskatchewan took me into custody. My grandparents couldn't keep me because they were not my legal guardians, according to the Saskatchewan government. So I was taken into custody. They did go to court and put a block on adoption, so I wasn't able to be adopted for my entire time away from my family. Um, so I was in five foster homes up to the age of 5.5 years old, one just about every year. What I can remember, I can only remember like the last two decently, because by then I was 4 and then 5 years old, kind of thing. They weren't good. They were not good foster homes. Basically, I think I was like just a cash cow for the foster families because they do get paid. My last foster home, I was taken out of that one and I was sent to Indian residential school. So I started residential school in September of 1969. I believe 1969, 1968. I was 5.5. It was 1968. And um, a big thing that came up right away was the fact that this was a Catholic residential school, and I'm left-handed. And to the nuns, that was the mark of the devil, and they tried to make you right-handed, because in Latin, is this I found this out later. In Latin, the word left is also the word sinister in Latin. And to them, they interpreted that as evil. So any left-handed people, they tried to make them right-handed. I refused. I dug in my native heels. And so they subsequently they did progressively harsher and harsher punishments. At the end of the second week, they had one of the nuns, and I'll never forget her. She was I'm not even going to name her because it's at this point. At that time, the nuns went by mother, and she was the mother superior. She put me in the girls' uniform, and I was born biologically male. Um, so they put me in the girls' uniform, thinking that that would be a punishment. To me, they were just clothes at the time. Then they made me sit on the girls' side of the classroom because boys and girls were segregated.
Yeah.
Um, and our desks were two side by side. So you sat with a desk mate. So it was a little bit of a bench and a bench kind of desk part. And eventually I was moved into the girls' dorm and made to live as a girl. My desk mate, her name was Karrie-Lynn, and she was the one that actually came up with my name. She thought, to help me fit in better with the girls, it would be better if I had a girl's name because my boy's name was Gary. And so her name being Mary, we picked a name halfway in between, Carrie with a K. We dropped the Y and we added the IE. So it's Karrie, Carrie. And she gave me the second half of her first name, which was Lynn. And so we hyphenated it and tacked it on. So Lynn. So hers was Lin, Mary Lynn. And we spelt it a little differently because we wanted to be different, but yet twinsies. So Lynn. So I've had that name since I was 5.5 years old,
Wow.
Karrie-Lynn. And that has followed me throughout life. And as I progress my story, you'll see how it becomes kind of significant. Um, so I was in residential school for 5.5 years. Well, a little more than that because it was from September to June was a year, right? So, about 5 years, 9 months. I was in residential school. During that time, being left-handed it was not good. I was nowadays you would call it child abuse, but at that time the nuns were, of the mindset spare the rod, spoil a child. So they corporal punishment was very big. Um, they gave straps, spankings. Some of the things that they've done was make you kneel on a broom handle for like half an hour and then make you stand up. I've had my bottom spanked bare bottom in front of the whole classroom where my underpants were pulled down, my bum out bare to the wind and spanked or strapped or whatever they had handy, a ruler. Um, Me using my left hand. Back then they had wooden rulers that had a metal edge to one side, and the mother superior would like to hit me with the edge down, the metal edge. And I've got on the back of my hands, I got all like these little white dots um, on on my left hand and a couple on my right. But those are from cuts from that metal edge. So those are all little scars that I have, and you can really see them when I'm out in the sun in the summertime.
Sure.
Um, and those were just the mild punishments. In the wintertime, we had a post out in the schoolyard that it was about 2 feet high, and they would punish you if it was like not in -40 weather, but it was still like close to if it was freezing. One of your punishments was to go out and stand on the post. and for an hour, and you'd be standing on the post shivering. And if you fell down, it doubled your time standing on that post.
I just want to kind of interrupt for a second because
Sure.
I'm angry, one, but two. So my dad, he's originally from Yorkton, Saskatchewan, and he grew up on the base in that area. And I just wanted to emphasize how cold it is in Yorkton in the winter. So even if it isn't -40, it's a real windy cold there. And hearing this punishment that she would regularly receive, like I wish Canadians understood the gravity of the calls to action. Call to action 6 is to repeal section 43 of the criminal code so that parents and teachers can't beat the crap out of kids anymore. And the fact that we haven't had buy-in on that has been so upsetting. There's been a few MPs that have put forward bills on it, and it's gotten tabled. And there's one currently on the dock, but I don't know if it's going to make it in time. I hope it does. But I wish that settlers who are listening right now understood the gravity. I have shared about this issue since I've started this podcast, since I started my social media, and yet I still have people still wondering, like, oh my God, is this something we should support? Yep. I don't understand the question. I actually was angry this week because people were insinuating that I had to somehow give permission for us to all agree to be doing this work. I'm like, I'm sorry. When did anyone need my permission? It is a call to action. Do the goddamn work, sign the goddamn petitions, support the MPs putting this forward. Like, write your MPs. Why don't you know your MP and have a meeting with him and tell him repealing this matters? This is matters in your lifetime. I want to see it repealed so that you can see all those scars that you carry were wrong. It makes me so infuriated that we have to explain this over and over to settlers who claim they read the calls to action, yet aren't doing the work to make this go through. It is 2024. Repeal
Exactly.
section 43 of the stupid criminal code.
Yeah. So punishments were a big part of daily life. And as a girl, well, in residential school, we only went 3 hours a day in the classroom in the mornings, and after lunch, our afternoons were taken up cleaning. We did all the cleaning of the school. Boys did outside work or anything that needed to be lifted and moved and things like that. The boys did that, but the girls, we did all the scrubbing and cleaning. We did laundry. We like uh, we weren't allowed in the kitchen because they didn't want us to steal food. Our food quality was not very good. We ate a lot of turnip, a lot of cabbage. Um, we had milk given to us from the farm. It was raw milk. And as a consequence, I'll admit, some kids, I think, had caught tuberculosis from infected milk. Um, one of the things that we knew almost from the first year was that that kids disappeared.
Mm.
And we were told that they were sent back, and so you're trying to help, hopefully you get sent back. But in the back of your mind, and even from the older kids, they go, no, they don't get sent back. They're buried. They're dead. They're in back somewhere.
Yeah.
So you didn't want to push them too much because you might,
Go
you know,
missing.
might go missing.
Yeah.
Um, so we knew there was children that didn't make it home from residential school even while we were there.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about an incident that many of you might be triggering. Sorry. It's a little triggering for me, but talking about it is one way of healing as well. Um, when About a month before my 7th birthday, okay, so the priest has, like, had his favorites. He had four boys that were his favorites, and they got to eat with him. They got to eat the good food, and they were in their teens or and young teens. Um, my uh, the nun that was teaching us, she sent me to the storage room to get chalk. And because I was continuing left-handed, I was the one that always had to go and run and get stuff, right? Um, for being hard-headed and stubborn. And when I was in the storage room, three of those boys came in the storage room and closed the door behind them, locked it, and they had me cornered, and they said they were going to teach me what it meant to be a real girl.
Oh no.
And they um, sexually assaulted me.
Sorry.
They took their turns while two of them held me down. The other one would do his business, and when he was finished, then someone else would take their turn. And when they were done, they left me there. They cleaned themselves off with my clothes and left me there. And about 10 minutes later, the nun came to find out what was taking me so long and found me. And she blamed me and said
Of
it was my
course.
fault,
Of course.
because I must have done something to entice the boys and make them do that. So it was always the girl's fault,
Of course.
right? It's always the girl's fault. So this was something I hadn't told anybody until about a year and a half, 2 years ago.
Mm.
I'd hid this all my life. I've hid the
Mm.
shame. I've blamed myself, even though my brain would say, but my heart, it's trying to convince the heart
Yeah.
that you weren't to blame.
Yeah.
That's the hard part. And I didn't really deal with it. I hadn't dealt with it until about a year and a half ago. And again, I'll tell later on why this all comes significant. Um, but residential school was just a horrible place. If you can think of a concentration camp for Indian kids, Native kids, that's what it was. Let's call it for what it was. That's what it was. Um, it was a concentration camp. Like not like I know there was throughout the history there was orphanages and shit like that, but the difference is that you are targeting a people,
Yeah.
and you so add racism on top of that,
Yeah.
right? And we had very poor quality food, very poor quality food. Oatmeal. We ate a lot of oatmeal, right? Cracked wheat, right? Soaked wheat, and then with milk.
Mm.
We weren't given sugar much, and if we did, it was like brown sugar,
Sure.
right? It was at that time that was probably or molasses was cheap, right? So that was our sweetener. We didn't get much meat. If we got meat, it was in a soup, and it was like if you were lucky, you found it one chunk of meat in your soup,
Yeah.
and you didn't tell anybody because shit that would get taken away from you. You ate that first. You didn't save it,
Yeah.
right? Um, and it was not. It was like I don't even wish that on my worst enemy. I don't even wish it on my assaulters
I can
because
tell
that
you
is
this. My grandfather, step grandfather boyfriend, he actually was in a concentration camp by Russia, and he was a German, so he was a Nazi. And he said that he never wanted to be hungry ever like that again.
yeah,
This was a grown adult in a concentration camp for a couple of years, not that long, but it was standard behavior to take babies. My granny was 18 months when she went in, and she left when she was 18 years to be in these prisons. And Canada still denies the gravity of it. Like
yeah,
there are still major newspapers writing op-eds and I get so upset at the lack of given a crap by these settlers. Like
Well,
I just I'm disgusted by
like the
them.
Nazi regime modeled their concentration camps on
Yes.
how Canada treated the First Nations, the reserves and the Indian residential schools.
Yes.
They modeled it. The
Yes.
difference being is that the Holocaust was so short term.
Yeah.
Our Holocaust as a First Nation people is long term.
Yes.
It's long term. It's been going since what, the 1860s,
Yes.
right? Um, and started with Sir John A. Macdonald. Like, and that it's and it continues. It still continues to this day. Uh,
Yes.
in with the new scoop and the Millennium Scoop, right? And targeting missing, murdered Indigenous women and girls, Two-Spirit and trans sisters, right?
This is
It
my
still continues.
this is my Bible. This is this is it. Like
Yeah,
it if Canadians haven't read that, why are you doing talking to us about our issues?
I know
Like,
that
shut
very
up.
well. Yeah, yeah. So to continue, so I was there in residential school till 1974, June 1974. And I was I was still a ward of the court, still a ward of the province of Saskatchewan. So I had a social worker that would come and visit like once a year, right, to make sure that I was okay. And she knew I was in girls' clothes. She knew it because that was the only clothes that I had. And when I met with her to talk with her, and of course we were told not to tell anything, right, to them. I had my collarbone broken when I was 8 years old.
Oh, for God's sakes.
And that was the Mother Superior had hit me with her yardstick across the left shoulder and broke my collarbone. And because I had to go to the hospital and get a cast and get it set, uh, there was a medical report generated that the province that province got. So social worker had to pay a visit. And the nuns told me that I had fallen off the slide because I was trying to push somebody off the top of the slide, and I slipped and fell and landed on my shoulder, broke my collarbone. And um, that's what she wrote down in her notes. And Mary Lynn, my deskmate, my best friend, ran after her when she was out running, going to her car, and she says, "The nun is lying. The nun hit them." And well, Marilyn called me her, hit her in the shoulder with her yardstick. And the nun had actually broken the yardstick. And she had hit me like edge on rather than the flat. And you know what those old yardsticks were, they're a lot tougher and a lot harder than the new ones, right? The newer ones. They're more robust. And she broke the yardstick and broke my collarbone.
I just don't know how they sleep at night.
Yeah.
Like, I
And
know that there are a bunch of retired Catholic priests and nuns that live right in Ottawa, and how that place hasn't been burnt down and every
yeah,
single one of them beaten with every bit of hate they gave us. Like, that's why I know our people are good
yeah,
people and giving, because
yeah.
it is unbelievable that they've been given some sort of free ride by Canada and the Canadian society. It's disgusting.
So about about 30 miles to the southeast of where I went to residential school was Gordon Residential School, which is
Mm,
infamous for being the worst documented abuses.
yeah.
And it was also, I think, the last one to close, I do believe. Anyways, uh, Marilyn ran after the social worker and told, no, the nun's lying. And social worker didn't believe her because she was a native kid, right? Yeah. The nun said that, and so therefore that's what it was. So like that it was year after year after year of stuff like that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
As you got older, you got more responsibility. You had to take care of the younger ones, kind of look after them. We kind of had to look after each other rather than letting the nuns, because I don't know who the heck came up with the idea that to put children in the charge of human beings that have no parenting skills whatsoever, are not going to have kids of their own, right? And uh, like it's mind-boggling to me even to this day why they would put those such people in charge of children,
Yeah.
right? That
Yeah.
like, I mean, they're not parents. Like they have no love for the children. And if it's another race, actually like racism was rampant, right? And this is Saskatchewan too, right? So rural Saskatchewan, of course, it's going to be like that. Um, so at the end, I was so glad to get out of there at the end of June in 1974. And then in fact, um, beginning of April, um, the RCMP came um, and the priest left in handcuffs.
That must have been really validating.
We were all in shock, and the nuns were in shock. And it was like suddenly we had like white people like from a school board in there, and they were interviewing us and giving us tests and everything to see where we were. And it's like it was like suddenly we had like when there was white people that showed up and were there, we had good food. The trouble with that good food is when you're used to so poor food that when you eat good food,
Yeah, it
it
hurts.
made half of us sick. So we were throwing it up. And of course, after the white people left, we got into trouble for wasting good food, right?
And
Uh,
I'll say this, I was really angry at my new doctor because she's from another country. She's from Africa and she doesn't know anything about us or anything. And I talked about how, the Canada Food Guide was made off of thanks to folks like yourself.
yeah,
The vitamin supplements are done thanks to folks like yourself. Vaccines are available for little white kids thanks to folks like yourself.
yeah,
All the experiments they did on you and
yeah,
our children, it
yeah,
is disgusting. It's no wonder we have so many autoimmune disorders, diabetes, and issues later on in life thanks to their absolute deplorable
yeah.
concentration camps called residential schools. And I wanted
I
to
mean, I
like
blame
honor
my
you.
IBS from back through my entire life
Yeah,
from that.
I honor
Like,
you.
right. So, um, at the end of uh, the school year 1974, I got permanently placed. I got taken out of there by a different social worker because the social worker that I had, I found out later she had lost her job and I got a new social worker. So I was taken out of there and I was permanently placed with another family in South Central Saskatchewan.
Mm,
But it was a Catholic community.
mm,
I will say it was in the La Flèche, Gravelbourg, Coder area.
okay.
Very en français,
Not myself, but
and very no, very en français, and very Catholic,
yeah.
right? Again, um, like still in the same, like I'm baptized Catholic, but I don't practice it.
Ah,
Uh,
fair.
yeah, so went to this family and I mean right now that is my legal last name because my name was changed by court order.
Ah,
Yeah, again, trying to hide me from my biological family, keeping me from getting discovered where I am, right?
right.
But I'll be honest, I won the lottery for foster families.
Oh,
Oh my
that's good.
they were they wouldn't believe me about anything that told them about residential school,
Mm,
but they were very supportive. They were very loving, and they were the
good.
family I needed to recover from that and continue on living. They treated me, I had to go back to being a boy, by the way.
Oh,
I had to learn how to be a boy over that summer holidays because I started public school in September and I saw how anybody that was thought of as a little bit different was persecuted. So I knew that there was no way that I could present anything boy, anything girl to anybody.
So
without getting.
did you know then? Did you know you
Oh,
were a
oh,
girl?
oh, 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 living at like 5.5 years, a little over 5.5 years as a girl. It wasn't punishment for me. I had to pretend to hate it, but I loved it. It was me. I found out. I realized that was I like. I mean, I love boy things, but I love girl things too.
Sure.
And and equally too. That's really weird. Like equally. Like I like
Hmm.
boy things and girl things. So I like my time as a boy too, but I loved my time as a girl too.
Yeah.
So I knew that there was like there was both boy and girl living in me,
Mm.
within me. I found out later on that's actually what they call true two spirit, and I didn't realize that until much later. But I had to go back to being like going into my girl side had to go into hiding, like deep hiding in rural Saskatchewan. Oh my God, you don't want to be thought of as anything different. And because the churches they teach binary thinking. There's only men, women, and only men and women can get married, and only men and women should love each other, and only men and women, and you need men and women to make families.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all. Like, never mind the fact that the Bible says that He makes everybody in His own image, and they are meant to be that way, and He loves all His children, not just the straight ones, right? Um, Never mind that part, right? Let's ignore that part. It can only be man and woman, right? Um, and they force that on people,
Yeah,
right?
I know. It's
Since the
just
Dark
wild.
Ages. Since the Dark Ages. That's they use the Bible to suppress the population,
Yeah,
right?
it's just
The
wild.
keep all the mass majority of poor people poor, and the rich rich,
Yeah.
right? Use the church and the Bible to do that. You better do this or you're gonna go to hell, right? You give us all your money or you're gonna go to hell,
Yeah.
right? You have to
Yeah.
buy your way into heaven, right? And you have to obey us, right? Right. So that's the church. But I would when I first went to that public school, I was a functional grade 3 coming out of 6 years of residential school.
Yeah.
But in that first year, I learned to love school
Mm,
and I caught up.
that's
By the
great.
end of my grade 7 year, I was writing my grade 7 exams,
Nice.
right? I found out that I loved math, right? I was a mathy person,
Yeah. Yeah, that's
right? I
great.
was a mathy person. I love science.
Yeah.
Like, maths and sciences. I I I hated English, literature, composition, anything like that. I did love history. I
Yeah.
loved history. Um, but and health. I didn't mind health because back then we had a subject called health, and I didn't mind that learning about our bodies and things like that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I hated literature, like anything like writing and like oh, I hated. The really weird thing about it is in my off time at home, I loved to read. I loved reading. I could read it. Like, give me a book, just let me read.
Yeah.
Right? I loved being nice and quiet in the corner and just reading and being able to
Yeah.
um, tune out
I
the world.
I loved reading for the same reason.
Oh God. And like, I mean, I could love nothing more than get sent to my room and sit there and read.
Amazing.
Right? So but I love the farm too. Like, don't get me wrong, I love the farm. We had horses and cows, and we had pigs and chickens and turkeys and ducks and cats, dogs, and you know. At one point, I even had a pet raccoon. I named him Router. I had a pet crow, uh, right, and his name was Bandit because he would steal things. But yeah, it's the farm. I really loved the farm. We had skidoos in the
Mm,
wintertime.
yeah.
And my second summer there, they bought me a motorcycle. So I had a motorcycle, right? So like, I mean, uh, I loved my time on the farm. I really did. And I loved working with the horses. I didn't like the tractors. My younger foster brother he loved the tractors, the farming part. I loved the ranching part, right? I loved it. Like, because horses, I wanted to work with horses, right?
Sure.
And I loved
Sure.
horses. Oh my God, I loved horses, right?
Yeah.
And but I that was a good life. It was a complete turnaround from residential school, and um like I graduated high school
Yeah.
with a 97.9 average, right?
Yeah.
My lowest marks were, of course, in English, right? But my maths and sciences were all up there. I had a 99 in algebra. Um, and I think I had a 98 in calculus. Um, a 90, I had 97 in both chemistry and physics. I had a 98 in geotrigonometry. So it's like my math, I was a very mathy person.
Yeah.
And then I left high school and I went to university. I went to University of Saskatchewan, and I went into engineering. So I did 2 years of engineering. Um, and even though I had a 4.0 GPA, I was good at it. I was mathy. It was all very male dominated. Well, in fact, I didn't ever see a female student at that time. This
Yeah.
was early 80s. And I didn't see any female students.
Okay,
None.
you know what? I'll just interrupt you there too because I also excelled in math and sciences and I couldn't afford to go to university, so I didn't. But I did work full time during the day and at night took courses at SAIT and became a drafter. And in 2001, there were only four Alberta land surveyors in Alberta that were
Yeah,
female. That
yeah,
that's it. And that's in
yeah, exactly.
2001.
So
It's
male
like
dominated, yeah,
yes,
fields.
yes.
And so I was out at a bar one night at the end of our second year. We were just kind of out having a like a celebration end of year kind of thing. And here's a bunch of us. There was about 12 of us sitting around three tables in a bar. And what were we talking about? Engineering. Engineering. And there was like a couple of tables with like that were had gorgeous girls sitting like not far from us, and they were all giving us the eye and everything. And all the guys were just talking about engineering. And and I'm like really interested in girls. So I wandered over there and chatted them up and had a great time that night. And I didn't have to think about engineering once. And I realized, you know what? Engineers are weird. I don't want to be weird. I'm
Yeah.
done. I'm done. And a funny thing, then come September, like I went back to the farm for the summer, and in September, I ended up getting a job out in the oil patch. And so I worked in the oil patch for 3 years. After that, and right around that time came Trudeau Senior brought in the National Energy Program, and the oil patch took a like employment took a dive. The economics in Alberta and Saskatchewan took a dive.
Yeah.
Everything was like, oh my God, everybody was laid off.
Yeah.
And I was actually I drove into Regina and I visited the unemployment office to apply for unemployment, and because I got laid off, uh, and I had been paying EI like
Yeah.
when I was working the oil patch, and I walked past the Canadian Forces Recruiting Center, and so just on a whim, I just walked in, right? Because why not throw in an application? So I did, and the recruiter says, if you've got like an hour or so of your time, I can. Funny thing, I always run into people going, can I have an hour of your time?
Yeah.
Right, Michelle?
Yeah. Right. Me
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
But so I went and I did the aptitude tests. And he goes, oh my God, he says, you scored so high, even in the spatial ability, you can any trade you want, like apply for any trade you want in the military. Right. And at that time, you needed an off like a university degree to be an officer, right? So I never even considered going officer. I just put because I didn't finish. And I applied for three trades. And I said, any idea when I would, you know, get a job? He says, well, he said the wait times are so bad right now. It's about a year and a half to 2 year wait. I said, okay, and I was going back to the farm. So the three trades I asked for were air traffic controller, because radar, working with aircraft kind of piqued my interest. My second trade was hull technician because being on the farm, I had learned how to weld, and a hull technician was a welder. Um, and my third trade was field engineering. So engineering, right? Building roads and bridges and things, and
Sure.
working with explosives, blowing them up. That kind of appealed to a farm boy. And I went home and I got a phone call 3 days later. We have an opening. Says, pack your bags. You're leaving for basic training in 3 days. So I'm going, holy crap. So I went out to tell I told my mom right away, and she goes, oh goody, right? Kind of thing. And
Sure.
I went out to tell dad, and I said, hey dad, I'm not gonna be here for harvest this year. And he goes, oh, why? Why not? I said, well, uh, I'm actually going to be at the other end of the country. Where? I said, well, I'm going to Nova Scotia. And he goes, what are you going out there for? Like all there's out there is like fishing, right? And I'm going, well, I said, I'm going to basic training. I said, I got called up in the military.
Yeah.
And I said, I leave in 3 days. So I'm gonna need a ride. And he goes, oh my God. He says, congratulations, right?
Yeah.
Because he was a veteran, right?
Okay.
He
So
served during
yeah.
World War II, and
Yeah.
he served during the Korean War.
There you go.
So he was very proud,
Yeah.
right? And so was mom. Um, and I mean, when I went to live live with them, um, I have always considered them my family.
Mm,
They were my mom and dad, and
sure.
they were right up until the day they died.
Yeah.
Right? I still think of them as my mom and dad.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it doesn't take much to become a parent, right? But it takes a mom and dad to raise the kids and love them and raise them right,
Yeah.
right? Um, so I went to basic training. Didn't have much of a hard time going through basic training.
For our listeners, I'm just going to emphasize this right now. I met Karrie-Lynn in person first, and Karrie-Lynn dwarfed over top of me. And in those days in the Canadian Forces, you had to be a certain height, certain weight, be able to
Yeah.
lift, etc., etc. So, like, I can absolutely see why you would have thrived at that time.
Okay. It was for the audience. I am 6'3" and I weigh 220 pounds, but I wasn't always this way. And because I was presenting male. Um, but at the time I joined the military, I was actually at 175, 6'4". Uh,
Hola.
yeah, so
You'd
so
be
I was a
yummy
I
to
was
me,
I
I'm
was
sure.
I was I was I was a beanpole. Like I was like really, but I was wiry, right? Like working with horses and that. Like
Yeah.
and um I became the push-up king in basic training,
Mm.
because every time I screwed up, they gave me 50 push-ups, and I got really good at push-ups. Sometimes I was doing like 400 push-ups a day.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, sorry about that. That's my fur baby.
I
Um,
seen it in the background. Our
yeah,
poor listeners who are podcast
yeah.
listeners only, they didn't get to see this tiny little black fluff ball, like itty bitty.
I got a little ankle biter. She's half Papillon, like the butterfly ears, and she's half Chihuahua. So she's a Papillon, looks like a Papillon, but she's Chihuahua size,
Oh my God,
right?
itty
So
bitty
she
cuteness.
weighs like 6.5, 7 pounds. But anyways, so I joined the military, and when I finished basic training, um, I went to get on the army bus, and of course, big corporal, like, burly guy goes, "You're gone on the wrong bus, son." Right? Right? And I said, "Oh, really? What bus am I supposed to be on?" You're supposed to be over on that one. So I got on the bus and I said, "What bus is this?" He says, "This is the Navy bus. We're going to Halifax." I'm going, the Navy? I didn't know I was in the Navy because all during basic training they call me private, right? And
Sure.
he goes, "What's your name?" I said, Private Cassette." And he goes, "No, you're not private cassette. You're ordinary seaman cassette." I go, well, thanks for telling me. What trade am I? You are a radar plotter. I'm going, radar plotter? So, well, what is that? Right? Well, he says, what trades did you ask for? And I said, I asked for air traffic controller, hull technician, and field engineering. And he goes, well, the first one has to do with radar. The second one's in the Navy. So you're a Navy radar operator. Welcome to the Navy, son.
Oh, that's funny.
So and then like, I mean, I'm going and I'm thinking to myself, the Navy. I didn't even know Canada had a Navy. Right? Turns out Canada had the third largest Navy at the end of World War II.
Yeah, yeah.
The
We have a
third
proud
largest Navy in the
history.
world.
As a former Sea Cadet, I can attest.
Yeah. And so off to Halifax I went. Again, still hiding as Gary. And of
Mhm.
course, this is my natural voice. This is the voice that I got, that I've had, after my voice so-called deepened when I went through puberty. This is the voice I ended up with. I had to learn a deeper voice in the military so that I didn't get accused of being gay
Mm,
or like different, because again, that's another environment you do not want to be different in
yeah,
at all,
yeah,
at all. Again, very binary in their thinking,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Um,
Well, and
so
they were attacking gays in
oh
public
shit, oh shit,
servants.
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah,
yeah. No, you'd get beat up in the middle of the night while you're in your bed. You would well,
yeah.
you could get disappeared, like if you're out
Yes,
at sea, like
yeah,
yeah, so you don't want to be different, right? And so I developed a Gary voice, like a deeper voice, one that I said, you're on the wrong bus, son.
yes,
So that's my Gary voice, harsher, deeper, and I that's the voice I had to make sure I used all the time, even when I laughed, right? So again, Gary had to deeper and deeper hiding.
sure. That's a
But
lot of masking.
yeah, that was a lot of masking.
Yeah,
No wonder I was good in drama in high school, right? But yeah, so I did 27 years in the military, traveled the world. I've been to all the continents in the on this planet. I have a pebble in my medicine pouch for one from each continent, including Antarctica. I was there for 7.5 minutes standing on a beach because we were bringing scientists down, and we were taking some home. So we
yeah,
picked some up in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and then we dropped some off in Santiago, uh, Chile, and but we stopped in Antarctica
yeah.
on the way down, and I was part of the boat crew to ferry them to the shore, and I got to pick up a
Mm,
pebble. Um, so that was very interesting. So I have sailed, uh, circumnavigated the globe twice. I've been on every ocean. I've been on every continent. I've been to 480 cities in 127 countries. I have been through both canals, Suez and Panama. I have been
wow.
around both uh, Horn of Africa and South America, the Strait of Magellan. And technically, I would be entitled to wear a gold earring in one of my ears as a sailor, because I sailed all seven seas,
Amazing.
right? Um, so just about every country that touches water, I've been there at some point in my
Amazing.
career. And many places like Hawaii and like, continental US and Canada, I've been to lots of times. I've been to every
Amazing.
province in Canada. I've been to most of the states. I think I'm only missing a few in the central part of the states that I haven't been to.
Which is
Uh,
funny being a Saskatchewan person.
yeah, right. So, but there's a reason for that.
Yep.
I'm part Anishinaabe, which is Ojibwe for our non-people of color. uh, that's what they call us here in Canada. Down in the States, they call us Chippewa. But we call ourselves Anishinaabe, and I am of the Saulteaux um, part of the Anishinaabe Nation.
Mm,
And Anishinaabe are famous for having itchy feet, the need to travel. In fact, a lot of the traders that trade between the different tribes and nations before European contact, they were a lot of them were Ojibwe or Anishinaabe traders, and that's how you had Caribbean shells up in the Arctic, and you know like corn was traded, beans was traded all over North America, the staples, right?
Yep. Yep.
They were traded, and these traders would carry all the different commodities,
Yep.
right, amongst the nations and trade. So and that was also how they got to travel and meet new people. And, yeah, so traders were sacred, and it was a nation or a tribe that harmed or hurt or cheated a trader rapidly found themselves no longer being traded with,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And to their detriment, right? So traders were sacred.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, I traveled the world. My last 7 years, I spent 6 years on the East Coast out of Halifax in the Navy, spent 14 years on the West Coast out of Victoria, BC. And when I was in Halifax, I had to hide the fact that I was First Nations, not just Two-Spirit, but First Nations.
Yeah.
When I got out to Victoria or BC, that complete change of culture out there being Native was celebrated.
Yeah.
So suddenly I was in an area where I could be for at least recognized as First Nation. In the East Coast, I needed to stay as white, stay out of the sun, stay as white as I could.
Sure.
Out on the West Coast, I could finally turn brown a little bit and and be proud of being native without
Yeah.
hiding it, right?
Right
In
on.
fact, I started powwow dancing, getting introduced to powwow dancing, and I liked men's traditional. I had got a regalia. I had made regalia. Somebody had donated me a couple of eagle wings way back when, and I made a bustle out of it, and I got a roach given to me. So all parts of my regalia, I was actually given at one point. I made my own ankle bells out of brass
Sure.
because being a welder, I could do that. And I did that in my spare time in the hull tech workshop on a ship.
Amazing.
Yeah, to prove to them that I could weld, so I made my own ankle bells
Nice.
and made my regalia. And oftentimes they would have me dance on the ship, on the bow of the ship, as we left harbor, right? Or as we were coming in. I had a good friend, his name was Earl Charters, who was a hoop dancer, would also do that. Um, so I met quite a few First Nation people within the military. Um, and then my last 7 years, I got posted to recruiting center here in Calgary, and I was able as a recruiter to get more into the indigenous cultures in and around Calgary in Alberta. I was like a Aboriginal recruiter. With a name like Cossette, they kind of anticipated that I was going to be en français, so they thought they had a bilingual recruiter, and I came there and they go, "Well, you're not, you don't look French." And I go, no, I'm native. And they go, oh crap. And well, they said, well, how about you go to the different reserves and start recruiting for us, like the different reservations. So that's what I did for 3 years. And at the end of 3 years, I was supposed to get posted back to sea. By the way, I had did several deployments overseas, peacekeeping
Sure.
and in war. I was actually in the Persian Gulf War. I'm
Wow.
a so very combat veteran.
Mhm.
Um,
I just
uh,
want to say thank you for your service.
oh, thank you. Oh, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. For you, I'd do it again. Right. So,
Tear break.
tear break. Yep.
Tear
Emotions.
break.
Yeah, I know. I get
Oh, that's
that too.
great. Oh, that's great.
So, I was my last 3.5 years. I actually switched over to primary reserves because I got offered a contract as the Aboriginal recruiter for Western Canada. So
Yeah.
I covered the all of Canada west of Thunder Bay.
Wow, that's
And
a
one of
lot of places
Yeah,
to go.
that's a lot of territory. And my
Yeah.
mandate was to visit at least every community and every reservation once within that 3.5 years. And I
Wow.
managed to complete that in the first year and a half.
Wow.
And in the in the last 2 years, I went to repeat many of the larger places, larger
Nice.
centers. I dog sledded, snowmobiled in the Arctic. I drove the ice road. Uh, I canoed up a river to get to Fox River up in northern Alberta.
Yeah.
And, like did I had like a wonderful experience, got to meet lots of people, um, lots of different communities, got into the Anishinaabe language, got to start on my journey into reclaiming my heritage as Lakota, right, which is Lakota. Um, and there's a little bit of history there. I found out my my great grandfather Frank Waiwaiskapo was Sitting Bull's grandson.
Wow.
Yeah,
Can I
so
ask you a quick
that's
question about
sure.
something that is kind of bugging me? So I'm Sat Dene, so way further up north, but I've always
Yeah.
I visited Cold Lake not that long ago,
Yeah.
and all you can ever hear are those fighter jets like constantly rumbling. You
Oh
can never
yeah.
see
Yeah,
them,
yeah.
but you can always hear them. I was wondering, are there many Cold Lake Dene that end up recruiting?
There's actually we got about 3.2% of the Canadian forces are First Nations.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah,
good
yeah.
number, actually.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
When I first started recruiting, we were about
yeah.
1.2%. And in my tenure of uh, of recruiting in the 7 years, we saw a little bit of increase my first 3 years. We saw like from 1.2 up to 1.7 or 8.
Yeah,
But when I became the Aboriginal recruiter for Western Canada and started going into the communities as a Canadian Forces First Nation person,
yeah.
and I got to wear the CAD the Canadian pattern. Um, a lot of kids thought that was so cool, right? Because
Nice.
they're into camo,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
right? They're
yeah.
very into camo, and so um, we saw a drastic increase. In fact, we had a couple of Aboriginal programs. One of them was called the Canadian Forces Entry Program,
Mm,
and that's for youth to come and try basic training. So it's 3 weeks, right? Intro to basic training, and part of that is also a culture camp, right? So you get to not only show the instructors your culture, but also to um, kind of ease your way into the military culture because it's quite a culture shock coming off the res into the military.
yeah,
So that helps get that, and you get like a better working rapport with your instructors.
yeah.
Um, and we had a 75% recruitment rate from attendees from that
That's
course. They
wonderful.
would literally sign up and continue on and finish basic training, go on to careers.
Yeah.
So it was good. But we were getting like 12 to 14 from across Canada attending that course when I first started. And by the time we were done, we had two courses
Yeah.
of 60 students.
Wow.
And again, the 75 to 80% recruitment rate.
Okay, I have another question
Yes,
for you.
sure.
So, at about the 90s, when the Gulf War started, I was a Sea Cadet. And so I was very filled with like pride for Canada, etc. But when the Oka crisis happened, I really struggled. And I felt a lot of racism from my teachers at the time. And
Yeah.
in Sea Cadets, we weren't really like, I was an openly Native. And so I was just wondering, how did you navigate that moment?
Okay. So um the Canadian Forces use the military kind of as a go between the QPP and the Oka.
Yeah,
And if you actually talk to some of the Oka people that had literally interacted with the Canadian Forces people, they would have you would have realized that like we weren't on the QPP side, we weren't necessarily on the Mohawk side, but we did help them,
sure,
right? Um, in that we were the buffer zone between the two of them.
sure.
Um, to me, it was protecting both sides rather than just protecting the police side.
Sure.
right? Um, that may not be how it came across
Sure. Sure.
on the news, because you have to know that the news is going to sensationalize everything.
Yeah.
They're only going to report and things that are newsworthy. Um, that little standoff between that one private and the Oka uh, a protester called Lasagna. If you
Mm,
remember that, they were standing face to face.
yeah. Yeah. The
That
infamous
was
picture.
staged.
It was staged, hey?
Oh yeah, that was staged.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, it's like, don't believe everything you see in the media, even. Like, God damn. Like, oh,
There you
sorry.
go. There you go.
Sorry.
No,
Whoops.
I swear quite frequently on
Oh my
this
God.
one. So I
Uh,
try to hold back a little better
yeah,
with guests. So don't
yeah,
feel bad or
yeah.
compelled.
So, anyways, I get so many people that come up to me and says, like, what's it like to be opposed to your people? And I go, I'm not there to oppose the people. I'm there to keep the peace,
Yeah.
serving the people. I
Yeah.
said, I serve everyone, even my own people while I'm in the military.
Yeah.
And I said, you know what? It's those of us in military
Yeah.
that do temper the reaction
Yeah.
a lot of times of the command, right? So we work towards peace from within too,
Mm-hmm.
the First Nation people
That's great.
that are serving,
Yeah.
right? And I mean, we're warriors. We're literally trained to fight,
Yeah.
hoping that we
Don't.
don't have to use it. Like
Yeah.
I tell people, yeah, we're trained to we're trained for war,
Yeah.
but we all pray for peace, right? It's not that we're training to go and make war on somebody. We're training to like defend ourselves, like because other countries don't.
Yes.
Yeah, don't
Thank
have
you.
the same mindset.
Thanks for answering all those questions. It's just
Yeah.
something I've never
No,
made peace with all of that. And it's something I'd love to one day. So I
I
just
have
thought I'd
never had a
ask you.
conflict. I had never had an internal conflict or a moral conflict about my serving in the military.
Yeah, that's
In
great.
fact, in fact, to me, um, it helps even our youth. It gives us social skills. It gives us leadership training. It gives us uh, like how to manage life, how to do things. There are quite a few people that have actually served in the military of our people that have gone back and become like our chief and band council,
Yep.
right? Like
Yep.
I know at least three chiefs that served in the military, and they're using their leadership training as leaders of their community. They learn social skills, they learn skills that they can take back,
Well, and
right?
I would agree with that. Like I took junior leadership, I took gunnery instructor, and I ran for city council. I ran for provincial politics. Like I do believe that you are instilled with leadership skills and confidence to put your name in. I just went
Right.
to my high school reunion, which is all predominantly white people, and like not one of them still felt brave enough to want to run. And I'm like, but everyone should see themselves in a position that they can be, school trustee, counselor, mayor, or any order of
Yeah.
government. So, and that dog is adorable. Oh
I
my
know.
goodness. Oh my
She's a
goodness.
suck. She's
What a
got a bow. She's got a
cutie.
bow on. Yeah, no, this is my fur baby.
Oh
But
my
anyway, some
goodness.
of other skills is public speaking,
Yes.
public relations. Like, oh my God, the skills that you learn
Yep.
in the military is incredible, and
Yes.
they're all skills that you can use like to bring back to your community.
Yeah.
And trades training, like, oh my God. Um, so I have no problem with indigenous people that serve in the military, right?
Yeah.
Even as veterans afterwards, we are still within our communities, we're still kind of on the same regard as elders,
Yes, and
right?
I would
Because
attest to that. We have a local candidate who ran municipally and provincially, and she is a former veteran, a former. She served and is now a veteran, and
yeah,
the entire city has nothing but love and respect for her. And
right,
so, and that bigger picture is that I've never met one that doesn't. I'm
right,
actually going to go to a movie with a different one tonight, and so those are questions that I think folks who listen want to ask, but they don't know
Right.
how to. Not that they
Yeah.
write in to tell me, but you know what I mean, where I think it's a question that's worth exploring a little. So I really appreciate you taking time to talk about your
Yeah.
journey, just to describe that for us all.
Yeah. So I retired in 2011
Mm,
and I took a year off. And in 2012, I got a job with human services in HR because recruiting was also HR, because you're basically your intake coordinator.
yeah,
You interview people, you have to help them out. You have to try and determine what program would be best for them, things like that. So there's a lot of human interaction, a lot of human resourcing
yeah.
involved in recruiting, right? And as well paperwork, right? You have to be very familiar with Microsoft Office, right?
Yes.
Up to and including Outlook because you're doing presentations, or
Yes.
Outlook because of your emails, um, PowerPoint for presentations. You got Excel and Access for your databases. Like we had a full professional suite, right? So um, I literally went and purchased Microsoft Office for my home computer because I needed those tools when I was out on the road recruiting. I needed it portable
Yeah.
as well. So I had my own laptop. Even though I had a military laptop, I had my own laptop as well.
Sure.
So but um I went into employment services for mental health and persons with developmental disabilities. So again, I was an intake coordinator for that. And again, you have to do a lot of interviewing. You have to talk on a on a like on their level, right? Um, like and interview them and help them determine what would be the best program for them, kind of thing, what they're interested in. And it's very, very people oriented, very people skills, right? And again, these skills again um, um, our our oh Thunderbird is talking outside.
Same. The
Yeah,
wind and the
yeah,
thunderbirds are talking. So as soon as
yeah,
we're done, I'm laying tobacco as a red thunder woman.
yeah,
I
me
have to go lay
too.
tobacco. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. So anyways, that those skills are going to be relevant in a few minutes too as well. Um, but I like I said, I worked for HR really for 9 years,
Yeah.
and in 2014, I got laid off, and I ended up becoming a city employee. Working, I'm a commissioner, but I'm working actually with Calgary City Police as a peace officer. Um, so I've done that for 10 years. Um, Again, serving the public, right?
Hmm.
In that capacity. Um, so to get to the real journey, started 3 years ago. In fact, in May, today's the 19th, May 18th. So yesterday is the 3-year anniversary of when the unmarked graves at former Kamloops Residential School were discovered or
Yeah.
made announced.
Yeah.
And this triggered me so bad.
Yeah.
Um, like major PTSD moment.
Yeah.
I was having flashbacks that were so vivid. Is like I was back in that storage room. I could literally smell the cold cement under my face.
Yeah.
I could smell the chalk dust. I could smell the paper.
Yeah.
I could see the flickering light of the fluorescent lights. And I could smell that isopropyl alcohol smell from the Ditto copier machine that was in that storage room. I like as if I was right there and I could feel the pain,
Yeah.
right?
Sorry.
Um, Throughout my life, I have always empathized and sympathized and knew victims of sexual assault, what they were going through and the emotions that they go through and the self-blame and the shame that they live with every day.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't go away. You only learn to mask it or hide it or learn to deal with it. Learn to like not let it rule your life because that never goes away.
Yeah.
That's a life sentence.
Yeah.
It is a life sentence.
That's why people choose bear over men sometimes.
Right. And so I have always known like what women go through,
Yeah.
because I went through that, even though as a boy, I was as a girl.
Sure.
And all of the things that I went through in residential schools came back in a rush. Like 2 weeks, I was like my mind was like jelly.
Yeah.
Um, and I had to resort to some of my healing journey that I did have some PTSD episodes in the mid 90s, and I had to work with an elder out in the West Coast to help me heal that. And I had to resort to some of my healing um, things that she helped me do.
Yeah.
And part of that is prayer, um, smudge healing, prayer circles. So I after that I offered to do that at work, to do a prayer and a smudge and a healing circle. And I ended up drumming the flag to half mast, and then I sang a healing song.
Mm.
And it was afterwards that when the staff sergeant had brought in coffee and donuts. Go figure, Tim Hortons, right? And cops and donuts and coffee, right? To kind of go together. We were in the lunchroom, just having a little sociable, like get together and everything.
Yeah.
And from across the room, somebody asked me, so Gary, can you explain to me why you're using a woman's hand drum? And the room went silent.
Mm.
And I'm going, oh crap. And I got no answer to like instant to respond, right? And I go, oh, and I
Sure.
just kind of hung my head and closed my eyes. I go, oh my God. And so they asked again, even louder. And it's like you could have heard a pin drop. In fact, I could hear my heartbeats,
I bet.
right? Pum pum pum, like,
Yeah.
and I said, and it was almost like I turned a key and I could feel the click in my head,
Yeah.
turning the key into a lock and the
Yeah.
tumbler's turning and it going click.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm done. I'm done hiding. I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
I'm, you know, it's too much. So I opened my eyes and I looked at the person and I said, it's because I am two spirit
Yeah.
that I can use a woman's hand drum.
Yeah.
And right away you got the old um non-person of color, older person, very binary in their thinking, going, oh, that means you're gay. That means you're effing bleep bleep f bleep 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 bleep, right? And I looked right at him and I said, no. I said, what you're describing is a sexual preference,
Yeah.
an orientation. I said, what I am is a gender identity.
Yeah.
I said, I am two spirit. I
Yeah.
said that I identify as both male and female in me in
Yeah.
equal parts.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, and so I explained to him what two spirit meant in my culture in Lakota, because I've been going back to my culture.
Yeah.
Um, when babies are conceived, uh, the, the creator sends down a part of his spirit to make it become alive, like to inhabit that body. And that's how we get life. He sends down boy spirits, he sends down girl spirits, and that's where we end up with the first two genders, male and female. The Lakota, we recognize at least five genders.
Mhm.
Okay. So what happens sometimes is that when he sends down two spirits at the same time, they can get crossed. And you have the spirits going into the wrong body. So you'll have um, a woman in a man's body, right? And a man in a woman's body. So that's how we sometimes had female warriors and male wives, right?
Mhm.
Today's day and age, we would call them trans people,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But on very, very rare occasions, very rare, when those spirits go across, they stick together and they go down and they inhabit one body, one
Mhm.
baby. The other baby is born stillborn,
Mhm.
right? Which is unfortunate, but there's one baby that's born with the spirit of both male and female. And
Mhm.
those are the two spirit people. In the Lakota Yapi, we had a name for that. It's called Winte, which is literally translates as man, woman. But those were our medicine people, our sacred people. They walk the world with one foot in the male world and one foot in the female world. They are much more sensitive. And because of that, they also walk with one foot in the spiritual world as well as the physical world.
Yeah.
And they are our spiritual guides, our sacred people, our medicine people, our healers, right? They had that specific role. They had specific ceremonies that only two spirit people can um can do.
Yes.
Okay, so they have twice the spirit. So they
Mm.
are much stronger in spirit. So we have to also watch what we do when we're participating in other ceremonies, because our medicine can overpower other ceremonies, and we don't want to do that. Um, yeah, so
Much like
I
when
said
women are on their time, their moon time.
exactly,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. Women's medicine is much more powerful than a man's, because the woman body not only has the power to give life, but it also has the power to cleanse itself, i.e., the moon time, right? So the woman's spirit and power of the spirit is or medicine, what we call, I like to call spirit or medicine the same thing,
Mm.
right? It's the power of spirit, which is medicine,
Yeah.
right? Men don't have that medicine or that power of spirit. So therefore, their ceremonies are much more powerful. They're much more powerful to make up, because our culture and our beliefs and our ceremonies, they're all about balance and harmony, right? So their ceremonies have to be much more powerful to balance the medicine and the ceremony of the women's. The women's medicine is more powerful, therefore the ceremonies are more subdued, more um, and a two-spirit ceremony is even more so. So
Yeah.
even when we do dance on powwow, we dance women's dances, but the subdued ones,
Mm.
right? We don't do the fancy shawl, things like that, the jingle, which are much more higher energy. They're a little bit more powerful. We
Sure.
dance like women's traditional kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So more subdued, because we don't want to overpower the ceremony of the powwow.
Sure.
Right? So again, I was getting to that medicine part. So I started my journey as a two-spirit. I said, that's it. I was done hiding. And for the first couple of months, um, I mean, I still didn't quite know where I was going with this.
Mm.
And I was wearing a orange shirt all the time, all the
Sure.
time,
Yep.
constant. Like for 2 months straight, I wore orange shirts. That's all I wore.
Yeah. Get it.
Because of the residential school. And then now they started finding more and more unmarked graves at more and more residential schools. By the way, right now they've searched 17 residential schools here in Canada, and we're up over 13,000 unmarked graves.
And so I'm just going to take a second to acknowledge this book that I got really angry at that time. I
Yeah.
was mad
Oh,
because
me too.
I had talked to people about volume 4, The Missing Children and Unmarked Burials. And I swear there was this like, that's so nice, you little dumb squaw. I'm so glad you said those words out loud. And then the moment that day happened, I think there was a real understanding like, oh shit, she's not just some dumb squaw. She
No,
said something, she was trying
no,
to educate us.
no.
Never got an apology,
And
I'll tell you that.
it was validating to every residential school survivor.
Yes,
Every single one of us.
yes.
Because we knew we had brothers and sisters that didn't make it home.
I know, I'm sorry. I'm
Ah,
really angry for you. And then
and we were
when
telling the commission, we were telling people,
they
and they
did
were
write
not
about
believing
it,
us.
they
And they were not believing us.
yeah, well, those settlers weren't, but I promise you,
Yeah.
as a child, uh, I knew you were right. And I
And
knew, yeah,
yeah, the last residential school closed in 1996. Anybody over the age, right? Anybody born after that,
yeah,
anybody born after that has been living in the time of residential school, or
yes,
anybody born before that, I mean,
yes,
right?
yes,
It's horrible.
yes.
It's horrible. Um, I was
And I was also
in fact,
angry too in
yeah,
2000 when we talked about Black Lives Matter. In city of Calgary had like this, 4-day, conversation with people, racialized folks in Calgary. And I was angry then too, because I felt like for how many years you have gaslit our stories of racism and hate. We've told you. We have all these volumes of books. We told you, and you gaslit us by claiming things like, "Oh my God, I had no idea this ever happened in the city of Calgary." And I'm just like,
Or
I don't.
that's ancient history.
Yes,
Ancient history. Oh, that happened so. No, it's not. If you're over the age of 34, you were living in the time of residential school.
yes,
Because the youngest residential school survivors turned 34 this year.
yes,
Don't you ever forget that? Oh my God, we still got young people that are still, right? And 60 scoop didn't just happen in the 60s. It's been continuing on, right? We got the Millennium Scoop. We got the new scoop now since 1918 or 2018. Anybody?
yes.
Like
Yeah.
it still
You know,
continues.
the
It still
reconciliation
continues.
action group that we have like we're trying to put together step by step, this is what you do when you give birth, because like in 2007 that's what got me political, was how they
Yeah.
treated me and almost apprehended my child. And I never want to see another single child apprehended because of some racist
No,
doctor or
no more
nurse.
stolen children.
No more stolen children, no.
Oh my God. Like, and I mean, and we talk about 60 scoop and residential school the most, or MMIW, right?
Yep.
But you got the Millennium Scoop, you got the new scoop.
Yes.
Um, we've had forced sterilization that
Yes.
nobody talks about,
Yes.
right? Forced sterilization.
Yeah, it happened in my husband's family.
Yeah. And
His
as recent as 2018,
Yes, yes, it's still happening.
it's still happening.
Yes,
Like like Canada's persecution of its First Peoples
yeah,
and and its track record is atrocious.
horrible.
2015, newly elected prime minister said we got to do better, and they haven't done nothing. Where are they? Where are they in the TRB, the Truth and Reconciliation
Commission.
recommendations? Where
You
are
know
they?
what? I'm
Is
going
it
to
the
tell
11?
you.
I think
I'm
they're up to
sorry.
11. Oh, so they gave us a day, an orange shirt day. Uh,
I know. I'm
uh,
with you. I'm so
big
sorry.
deal.
I'm going to apologize to you. I'm a part of the Liberal Party of Canada. My name is on liberal.ca. I'm part of the Indigenous Peoples Commission. And I'm telling you, I'd hoped we'd do better, quicker, sooner.
Yeah, me too. Drinking water, a
Yes.
basic need. Drinking water,
Yes.
right? A basic need.
Yeah.
There's no reason why any reserve should not should have boil water advisories. There's
You and
none.
I know why they do. You and I
No,
do. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right?
Yeah.
Keep us poor on the rest.
Yes.
Make us leave the rest for economic reasons so
Yes.
that once we are assimilated, once we are no longer there, once we are no longer identifiable as a people, they can do away with the Indian Act. They could do away with Indian status, which, by the way, we are the only people in Canada that has to carry an ID card to prove who we are,
I know. It's
right?
crazy.
Right? And once they do that, then they can then claim that they own the land base upon which this occupier of country of Canada exists, because all of Canada is unceded.
Yes.
It is not
100%.
ceded. It was treated, which meant it was an agreement to share the bounties of the land, but they were not bills of sale.
Yes. Oh my
All the
God.
crown land should be under our
Hallelujah.
control. All the crown land should be under our control,
Yes. Hallelujah.
not the government of Canada.
Oh my
That
goodness.
land was to be held in trust for the First Peoples. That's why it was called Crown Land.
Yes.
Yeah,
Hallelujah.
yeah. Oh, you could tell I got some very passionate issues that I'm or issues that I'm passionate about.
That's why I'm
Uh,
so grateful you would
yeah,
come on and talk about it. I also wanted to let you know I run a book club. I've run it since 2016, and our next book that's coming up in June is Two Spirits: Stories, Sex, and the Ceremony Behind
yeah.
It All by Alicia Two Bears. So
So,
yeah,
so I do have a two-spirit pride flag. You can see back here,
beautiful.
right? The circle with two feathers
Yes.
on the pride flag. However, this pride this flag isn't really accurate to me, because right around the time I started wearing orange shirts, I also started my journey to let Karrie-Lynn out.
Mm,
And I started HRT. And so this is going on 3 years as presenting female.
yeah.
In September of that year, I went to work and I told them, okay, you're going to see me. I'm starting transition and I'm going to be presenting more and more female. I said, you're going to see me wearing more jewelry. You're going to see me wearing lipstick, makeup, and doing my nails. I said that I said, that's who I am, and I said you got to live with it. Gary had his turn to drive for 52 years, drive the bus,
Yeah.
and now it's Karrie-Lynn's turn,
Yeah.
right? So myself, I am not, although I do identify with the trans community, I'm not going to fully transition. I'm going to
Sure.
remain both genders.
Sure.
Okay. So
Yep.
I'm not gonna go the full transition. I'm going to stay both genders. I'm gonna have my male bits, but I got now female attributes that
Yes.
uh, are rather obvious up to in person, right?
Right. But honestly, you're just so beautiful
So,
inside and
so
out.
this is I was
It's
given this recently.
perfect. Yeah.
Was given this recently, which is actually my true flag. So it is the trans
Oh,
flag with the two-spirit symbol on it.
I love it.
That is me.
Yeah.
That is me.
I
That is
love it.
me. Because I have gone through some transition, right?
Yeah.
It's not 100% the way, but it's a transition. So I
Yeah.
do identify with trans in that respect. But
Sure.
with me, there's also a spiritual component, which is the two-spirit component,
Yeah.
the spiritual component. So
Yeah.
um last year I went back to my home reserve and I danced for the first time female at my home reserve, which was very, very um oh, it was such a wonderful experience and how accepted I was within my home community. And they were all excited that that they have a two-spirit member. So um I am I like the words knowledge keeper. I don't like the word elder.
Sure.
But as a two-spirit, even as a veteran and as a two-spirit member that that practices the traditional teachings, um, they like I considered an elder of my community, but I like the words knowledge keeper because I have learned a lot,
Yeah.
and um, one of my I think my biggest duties I think is to give back.
Mm,
If my story can help one person um, in their journey or even to deal with issues, then what I went through is worth it.
yeah.
Only have to help one person, right?
Mm,
But I pat like the duty of a knowledge keeper is not to uh, pull in all the knowledge and learn it and everything and then keep it to themselves. No, it's to share it,
yeah.
right? It's to share that knowledge so it makes the path a little bit easier for others
Yes.
coming up behind you,
Yeah.
right? So um yesterday I went to into a land claims meeting that was put
Oh,
on by my chief and council came to Calgary and uh to talk
what?
about our land claims and give us an update. And I was asked to do the opening prayer and closing prayer. Um so I did.
Amazing.
That
Yeah.
was the first time that was able to have that opportunity for my own band, like for my own members, and I
That's
felt
special. Yeah.
very honored. But again, that's like they said, well, we're going to be coming back again and again. So be prepared to keep doing it.
No problemo. No
Yeah,
problemo.
exactly. So, but no, that it's very humbling to
Yeah.
be looked upon as like a uh like a resource, or not just a resource, but as an asset of your home nation, like that, and
Yeah.
that they value what you've learned and what you have to say.
I wish I could emphasize enough to you all your experiences from Indian residential school to 60 Scoop to being a veteran to coming out on your journey of two spiritness. Like it is just, I am so honored
Well,
and
I'll tell you,
privileged.
this journey on estrogen, boy, whew. Okay, so HRT. If you got questions about HRT, now's the time to ask them because it is quite a trip.
I'm just getting to I've been jokingly calling myself a woman of a certain age because I'm starting to get hot flashes. So I don't even know how to start that conversation with my doctor because, and again, indigenous people versus non-indigenous people, it's a different world. So I'm gonna have to talk to some elders about what does this look like for me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I mentioned that I was going to explain how my HR is going to come into play, and I did have a shirt up. It was a jersey for an organization called Warrior Gamer Foundation.
Mm,
It's an online gaming community based down in the United States, and I volunteer as a peer-to-peer support for veterans, like getting out of the military if they're experiencing a rough time. And it's down on their level. It's not analyzing. It's just a friendly ear if they need to vent, if they're having difficulties in their home life. They got somebody to talk to, somebody that's there at least to catch them. And we and like the Native community, um, the suicide rates for veterans it's much higher than the general population, and that's to help. The reason why we're doing peer-to-peer support is to help mitigate that and try to get them to make that first step to reach out for help. And just having somebody to talk to oftentimes is that first step, and we don't want them to go down that deep dark rabbit hole of depression. um, I've been there.
yeah.
I'll be the first to admit, I went down that rabbit hole twice. Both times I attempted
Jeez.
suicide. I was unsuccessful both times, only because I was interrupted both times. My second time, my partner found me.
Mm,
And by the way, my partner in life, we've been married for 37 years. She decided to stay with me, so we're still together.
wonderful.
I love her to death. And the biggest thing, if there's one thing I've learned about the LGBTQIA2S plus community, is love. You
Yes.
love the heart's going to love who the heart's going to love, right? And you shouldn't let anybody else tell you who you need to be, who you should love. Um, the heart's going to love who the heart's going to love.
Yeah.
And love is love. It doesn't matter what the gender is. It doesn't. It's you love the person inside. You're not going to love the outside of the. You're not falling in love with the outside of the person. You're falling in love with the person inside.
Yeah.
What the outside of the book looks like, who cares?
Yeah.
Who cares? This, like me. I was male, and now I'm presenting female. I didn't. The inside of me is still the same. It just because I changed the covering on the book. The title's still the same.
Yeah. And the
The
contents.
chapters, verse,
Yeah.
and paragraphs inside are still the same,
Yeah.
right? Thoughts and feelings are still the same. Well, I'll gotta admit, with estrogen, the feelings are much more intense.
Sure.
Yeah, like um, social norms for a man is like a whole lot different than women. Now I
Yeah.
can. It's socially acceptable for me to cry in
Yeah.
public,
Yeah.
right? I don't have to hold back my feelings, even though I felt them as a man. I can, and I feel them now as a woman. It's much more acceptable for me to be able to cry,
Yeah.
and that's a shame. Men should be allowed to cry too,
Yeah.
right?
I
If
agree.
we're if we're talking about equality, we got to talk about true equality.
Yeah,
right?
agreed.
Not only just with jobs, job equality, human rights. Like everybody is human. So everybody should have the same equal rights, right? Whether man, woman, female, male, trans, two-spirit. We all should have the same rights, right? What happens a lot of times though is um, I think that the political picture oversteps its bounds and starts getting involved in where it shouldn't, where it shouldn't.
Yeah.
Like really and truly, what I am as a trans two-spirit person should have nothing to do with politics,
Hmm.
right? Um, the governments that are anti-trans and with the anti-trans like homophobic or LGBTQ, like anti-LGBTQ, they should keep their nose out of it. It's none of their
Agreed.
business, right?
Yes.
What me transitioning should has no bearing on anybody else but me and my wife. It's
Yes.
our issue to deal with between ourselves and work it out between ourselves. It does not you have a problem with this. It's not a me problem, it's a you problem. Look at yourself,
Yes.
right?
Agreed. Agreed.
So yeah, so there are quite a few things that did come into play once I started my journey. As I was mentioning with the peer-to-peer support, now took over as a project manager for the peer-to-peer, and we call it the CARE program. And so again, my HR experience has come into play for that. My life as a two-spirit person, I had to hide. It helps young people. I work with some Calgarian Indigiqueer community, right? So people who are Indigenous that are of the LGBTQIA2S plus community, we meet once a month. Um, and we're always looking for new members. If you want to join us, we meet every third Monday um, in at the Center for Sexuality in downtown Calgary,
Yeah.
right? And we meet from 5:30 to 8:30 or 9 o'clock. There is an Indigenous youth program that meets every second Friday, and there it meets at different spots, but there's that available as well.
Yeah.
So, and I'm going to go and give a 2 hour presentation to them on the 7th of June, I think it is. So I'm going to be
Yes.
attending there. And
Well,
both of
I'll
them,
try to get my little one to join you all.
yeah,
Yeah.
some of those have really like those communities they're really good for people of Indigenous ancestry that are of um LGBTQIA2S plus community. And we even have a couple of people of color that are not Indigenous but have joined us, which is also good for perspective. So we are inclusive too for
Yes.
POC as well, right? So um,
And that's with Chase and Sarah.
yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
yes, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Sarah Good Medicine. Oh, lovely,
Such,
lovely person.
right?
I love her to death. Oh my
Me
God, I
too.
love her to death. We talk quite a bit, even on the phone.
Nice. I'm just
Yeah,
texting my little one so that
yeah.
they'll remember and put it in their calendar in the hopes that they go.
So recently, we were at the Red Dress Powwow
Yep.
at the Big Four building earlier this year, like in March.
Yep.
And so I was dancing my two spirit um, um, ribbon skirt for the first time
Gorgeous.
at the powwow, and I had my regalia. So I took out my feather fan. I had made a two-spirit feather fan. And on one side, it's the eagle feathers, 7 eagle feathers, and then I had blue macaw feathers in there for like the blue being in the Navy,
Sure.
right? Um, for quite a long time, well, 27 years. But on the back side, I have a blue feather and a pink feather crossed.
Mm,
One for my blue side, one for my pink side, and that's towards me, right?
yes.
Because I'm two spirit.
Yes.
Well, I'd taken out about 30 seconds after I'd taken it out and I'm walking around, the pink feather disappeared.
Oh,
And I'm going, oh my God, where is it? And I'm starting to look all over the place. And of course, Sarah and them I had they were the ones that noticed it. And so they like I was beside myself, so I was walking around, and I was at the farthest side of the powwow over by the concession stands. And Sarah got on the microphone up on the stage and goes, Auntie Carrie, Auntie Carrie, can you come to the stage? Your feather has been found. Auntie Carrie, come to the stage, please. I went, oh my God. Right. So I'm lifting my ribbon skirt so I can scoot. Like, I can't really run very fast, but I
Sure.
can run, I can scoot. So I'm kind of scooting along, and it's like all these people, like even old aunties sitting in the chairs in the audience, and all the vendors are going, run, Auntie Carrie, run, right? And it's like, oh my God. And so that has haunted me for like the last 3 months, because everywhere I go and I run into somebody who's been there, they're going, oh, it's Auntie Carrie, right? And they come up and they shake my hand. It's like, oh my God, I'm never gonna live that down.
But in the best way, all the
Yeah,
little
but
two
but
spirits
that
and all
whole
the
powwow,
cheerlings.
that
Yeah.
whole powwow, people were coming up and shaking my hand at like, hi, Auntie Carrie, I'm so and so, right? And it's like, oh my God. But that, but like it's one of those little happy
Yeah.
incidences that kind of carries and follows you, and it's like it kind of touches the whole heart when people call you Auntie Carrie, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
so
know auntie is one of those wonderful words that people will call me too, and I love that.
yeah,
It feels
yeah.
amazing. So,
No, I absolutely love it. It's better than being called grandma.
yeah, no kidding.
Because I don't feel that old. That's why I
I'm
really don't like the word elder, because I don't feel old. I'm not elderly. I
I
don't
feel
feel like that.
you.
Yeah,
Carrie,
so
I wanted to ask you about the Jane Project. Would you feel comfortable sharing about that?
yes. Okay, so there is a charity in Toronto. It's called Jane's Project. Okay, so it was set up originally, from what I was told, was that a married couple, their child had come out to them as trans. So it was a boy, and they they told him his name was Jane, that their name was Jane, and that they were a girl. And of course, in a fit of rage kind of thing, or shock, the dad kicked them out of the house to, like, get up, get up, get up. But after a few hours of calming down and starting to think rationally, they really regretted it.
Sure.
So they started calling all the friends and started looking, and they couldn't find Jane. And three 3 or 4 days later, um, Jane's body was found in a back alley in downtown Toronto. Um, they'd been murdered, and the family was devastated. Like, I mean, it was their only child. And so a year later, in memorial, they started a charity. It's called Jane's Project. And we had um like, I originally found out about it when I was like on stream. And so what they do is it's a registered nonprofit charity, and they help um trans youth and two-spirit youth get off the street, if they've been kicked out, to give them that first 1 month, uh, uh, get them some shelter, get them some food, and get them on their, like, stabilized and get into programs, because oftentimes there's like a up to a 1 month wait to get on government programs, right? So this is to help them over that hump, and it costs about $1,000 per person
Yeah.
for that support for that first month on their own on the street, and to get them off the street, find them shelter, things like that.
Yep.
So I've been involved with a couple of streams, charity streams, and on one stream that we had done, we had raised on stream. At one time, we had like 1,600 viewers of the stream, which is phenomenal for a streamer here in Canada. And we raised $12,000 in 6 hours on stream. I was so proud of that. Um, which the city of Toronto had matched. And then the province of Alberta or province of Ontario, sorry, had matched that. So $48,000 went into the charity. That gets 48 kids off the street. Like that's huge,
Yeah.
huge, huge, huge. We've done some subsequent short-term streams that have also put some more money into that coffer. I also participated for one in Vancouver. We raised 6,000 for that one. So I'm very, it's one of my little passions to give back. But the reason why I'm talking about the James Project one specifically is because there was an incident. We had an open phone lines for this stream. And one father had called in and said, my son just came out to me 2 days ago. And he says, I don't know what to do. I haven't kicked him out. I haven't talked to them. I just need time to absorb this, but I need to know what to do. What do I
Sure.
do as a parent, as a father? And I said to him, and they addressed the question to me specifically. And I said, okay, can I ask you a couple of questions? He says, sure. I said, number one, I said, do you love your child? He says, of course I do. I'm their parent. It's like, of course I do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I said, okay, number two, um, are you comfortable or do you think you've done a good job raising them? Like, have you done your best and given them like what they need and nurtured them and loved them? And, I said, do you trust how you raised them? Right? Do you think that they are
Mhm.
capable of making, sound decisions and their own decisions? And he says, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I said, well, then I got a couple of things. I got news for you. I said, a few things. And I said, number one, I said, you never had a son. You had a daughter. You just didn't know it. And I said, number two, do you know the level of trust it took for them to come out to you as their parent? I said,
Yeah.
many trans kids or kids of the LGBTQIA plus community don't trust their parents enough to come out to them. And that's the fact that they showed you that level of trust to tell you who they really are. I said, you can't buy that trust. I said, oh my God, that is so huge. I said, that is such an honor. I said, and
Yes.
it shows just how good of a job you did as a parent. I said, that's amazing that
Yeah.
they did that.
Yeah.
And I said, you're not losing a son.
Yeah.
I said, you're only losing the illusion. You had a son. You had a daughter all along. You just weren't allowed to see her. I said, you didn't see her before, but now your child is coming to you and telling you who they are. I said, that's absolutely amazing. I said, just love and support them, support her in her journey. I said, because it's going to be hard enough without other people's support. So she's going to lose friends. She's going to lose other members of your family that are just not going to understand or see it. I said, but the fact that they got your trust and that they trusted you because they need the support. I said, oh my God, love and support them. I said
Yeah.
they are on a journey that is not of their choice.
Yes.
It is not of their choice. They were born that way. They were born different inside. And I said, I will venture to say that they knew a whole lot longer than you think they did. I said, I myself knew I was different when I was 5. And I said, it wouldn't surprise me. Some know when they're 2 or 3 years old that they're different,
Yeah.
that they're not supposed to be a boy or they're not supposed to be a girl. They should be wearing dresses or boys' clothes. Some know as early as then.
Yeah.
I said, that cannot be discounted. And I said, but the fact that they know who they are and they trust you with that. I said, that's a massive step in trust. I said, go with it. And a couple of weeks later, I was on the same streamers because I was piggybacking. So on the same streamers, and we were talking about Indigenous issues. The that child, that daughter called in, says, "Yeah, you talked to my dad a couple weeks ago, and I would love to thank you for helping him see who I am." in helping me, in supporting me in my journey. Because we had a long talk about that afterwards. And
Auntie.
about half hour after that, the dad called and thanked me for helping them see how truly wonderful that his new daughter was. Yeah, that's a leaky eye moment, isn't
Yeah,
it?
tear moment.
Yeah, yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you,
Because
Auntie.
because it gets you right in the feels.
Yeah.
Like and that
And that's what we want for all of the
that's not what
kids.
we want for all of us, right?
Yeah.
And political parties that shove their nose into trans issues, they should just stay out of it.
Yeah.
Stay out of it because it's a moot point. We don't transition our kids before 18 anyway. The medical community doesn't do that. There is nobody in Canada that fully transitions and has bottom surgery before the age of 18.
Right.
No, right? Um,
Yeah.
my 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 recommendation, and I do not support transition until they're old enough to fully understand the implications. However, I also fully support puberty blockers
Yes.
for kids because to me, I feel that it is really bordering on child abuse
Yeah.
to force them to go through the puberty that they do not want.
Yeah.
And
Well,
puberty
and
blockers, all they do is they stop the puberty. They don't, if you want to reverse that, you stop taking them.
yeah.
And then you start going through the puberty that your biological body will go through. It doesn't affect you. It doesn't do anything that's non-reversible.
Yeah.
That's
And this is
what,
going to affect the very conservatives that are putting this forward because like these are for straight kids too, puberty blockers.
yeah,
So imagine your little straight kid is 8 and is starting to go through changes. Well, the
yeah.
whole purpose, the
Early
reason
changes.
exactly, this is why they
Because
were
when they do
invented.
that, they get targeted as for
Yeah.
being different, not normal, right?
Hmm.
Right? Same with kids that go through puberty late,
Yes.
right? Um, like I know in my school, this is in rural Saskatchewan. I know a couple of kids that didn't start puberty till they were like 16, 17,
Yeah.
right? Do you know how embarrassing it is to be in the locker room and as a 16-year-old boy with no pubic hair, no manly features, you're still look like a 10-year-old boy.
Sure.
It's and you're targeted
Sure.
as being different, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I
Because you're not
know.
a man. You're not
It's
a
a
man,
shame.
right?
Yeah, it's a
And
shame.
yeah, but on the flip side of that is the 8 or 9-year-old that has gone through puberty early and everybody's starting to bug you because you got hair, right?
Right.
Where the rest of us don't, right?
And you think like an 8-year-old, you think like a 9-year-old, but your body does not present that way. So like
Exactly.
this is literally for straight kids too, and all of these
Yeah,
ignorant people are unaware how this is
yeah.
going to negatively impact them too.
I mean, our present government here in Alberta wants to be more like Florida
Yes.
because she literally said that she admired Ron DeSantis and his policies. Oh my God, they're trying to enact a law that's going to force teachers to out kids to their parents. If the parents don't already know because the kid hasn't told them, then they are not good parents.
They're
You
not
don't want to
safe.
be forcing teachers to out kids
Totally.
because you're going to be forcing teachers to out kids to bad parents,
Yep.
the ones that the kids do not trust.
No.
Because if the parents are supportive and they truly love their kids, they would probably already know.
Well, and
And
we wouldn't have
they don't
on the
need to be.
streets.
Yeah. Well, they
We
don't need to be, they don't need to be told that their child is used now or wants to be a different gender.
yeah.
They'll already have known.
Yeah. And we wouldn't have homeless 2S LGBTQ today from those problematic parents, right?
Right.
So,
That is correct.
yep.
That is correct.
Ay,
And
ay, ay.
again, um, political parties should keep their nose out of it.
Yes.
Keep their nose out of it. That should be the scientific and medical community,
Yep.
right? Because they're quoting stuff, pseudoscience, to back their policies up that has no basis in fact from the medical or scientific community. They
Yep.
just, it's like down in Hollywood, right? That one actress, I'm not going to mention her name, but everybody knows who she is, right? Says that vaccines cause autism, right? From that, thousands and thousands of kids are not vaccinated and are at risk because of that.
We just had our first death in 30 years in Canada with a child who had measles.
Yeah,
So we had it eliminated, and now we
it's
have a
coming back.
child that lost their
Polio is
life.
coming back.
Yeah, yeah,
Polio's coming back.
yeah,
That's such a horrible disease for kids,
yes, 100%.
right?
Yeah,
It's making a comeback because, oh, we don't need that. We don't need vaccines, right?
yeah, it's horrible.
Vaccines save lives.
Yes.
Saves your kids. Save your kids. God damn.
I know,
Oh,
I
oops,
feel you.
there it goes again.
I'll take these problems, my friend.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to talk about today on the podcast?
Um, HRT, a few things people never ever warned me about was the ups and downs of emotions,
Sure.
the emotional roller coaster. I'm here to tell you, boy, oh God, um, it is such an emotional roller coaster. Something nobody ever told me about is that I have a cycle. I didn't know I would have a cycle. I'm not capable of having a period, but I
Sure.
definitely have a cycle.
Yeah.
Um, and it's every 28 days. I know this for a fact because I go by my injection days,
Sure.
right? And every fourth injection day is when it really starts. And I get swollen ankles, I get bloated, I get cramps, I get my my breasts ache.
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I get I get grouchy.
Yep.
Like, yeah,
Yeah.
cry at the drop of a hat. Like like even my wife says if I didn't know any better, I'd know. I'd swear you were on your moon time,
Yeah.
and that's exactly what it was. What it is. It's a cycle because it lasts. It lasts 4 days,
Yes. Yes.
and then after that, I stop cramping. I stop feeling bloated. My ankles go back down, and
I
I know that they're swollen because when I go to court and my ankles are swollen, I can't get into my heels.
Oh my
I have to
goodness.
wear
It's
flats.
so
and
funny, right?
and
I
I'm
it's
six
true.
foot three and I'm wearing heels, y'all. Right? So, and I'm using y'all as a an Americanism because I
Yeah.
don't usually use it, but that makes me 6 foot 6, and I'm much more intimidating.
You're wonderful. I am so
But
grateful. Thank
yeah,
you.
but it's quite
Yes.
a journey. Oh my God, it's a wonderful journey.
Yeah.
Like I will take that cycle any day of the week because for me it's worth it. To be able to be live 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 me,
Yeah.
like live my true self. People think or have said that I'm delusional. I'm going, no, no, no. When I was acting and hiding, that was
Mm-hmm.
delusional.
Yep.
This is actually my true self. And since I decided to come out and live as my true self, I said I'm done hiding. I'm done. I want to be the nice person I've always wanted to be,
Yeah.
right? So, and I'm happy. Oh
Yeah.
my God, I'm happy. I've never been happy with myself. Never been happy with myself until I decided to shed off that yoke of hiding. And I'm happy. I'm absolutely happy. Michelle, you've seen pictures of me before, my before and after. I
Yeah.
like to call them my before Bud Light and after Bud Light pictures.
Night and day difference. Night and
Right?
day.
Night
Like
and
you
day.
can see in your eyes you're the same
Yeah.
person. But
And
wow.
somebody's pointed out to me that I don't, that they couldn't believe that's me, that I don't look like that. And I said, well, that's not me.
Yeah.
That's that's who I was
That's
before.
scary.
That was when I was hiding,
Yeah.
right? And I was acting, but that's not me
Yeah.
anymore. And yeah, that's why I don't look like that, right?
I remember seeing a friend of mine who's gay, and he was in high school and he had like his cute little highlights and such, and he was trying to pass as straight. And I'm like, oh, that's when you were still straight, hey? Like joking, right? When you're masking that right then and such. So just it's and I just want to emphasize for folks listening who are straight and cis like myself, this is why we talk about different oppression dynamics and how we as straight and cis are blind to
Yeah,
the incredible amount of inner work folks like Karrie and at that time Gary were going through to try to understand who they were and where they're from. And like even masking being indigenous, I have a lot of feelings about that too, because I had to as well, or I
yeah,
did, not knowing, et cetera, et cetera. But that bigger picture, I hope you know I honor every moment of your journey, and I'm so
yeah.
grateful that
So
you were
I
willing to
do want
share
to
it.
mention something else that had just kind of popped into my head. And
Yeah,
okay, so I got ADHD. So as
me
Gary, I used to
too.
get squirrel moments, right? But
Yeah,
now as Karrie-Lynn, I get whole herds of squirrels, right? All at once, and they're all going different directions. So try to herd those.
yeah.
But anyways, point out about the 60 scoop. Um, one of the people had that I had run across recently, they said that they brought up the incident with Buffy St. Marie, right?
Oh,
And I said to him, I said, "Do you want to know something?" I said, I'm still on the fence with her. And I said, that again, that's up to her. And I said, she's been a great advocate for Indigenous rights, right? And a great spokesman. And I said, I'm not going to take that away from her. I said, whether she is or she isn't, that's not for me to decide. But I am going to tell you one thing about that. I said, everything that they pointed out as being erroneous and that she claimed this and claimed this and her story changed, blah, blah, blah. I said, you know what? Mine did too. And I said,
yep,
I'm 60 Scoop
yep,
and I'm from Canada.
yep.
And I said, everything that she said, I said, it it hit tick marked all the boxes that I had to go through as 60 Scoop. And I said, there was one thing that I had that she didn't have. And I said, I finally got an unaltered copy of my certificate of live birth that was written out in my mother's own handwriting
Mm,
that proved who I was.
sure.
I said, because before then, I was told I was Métis, probably of Cree descent, that I was um, fully Ojibwe, that I was Chippewa. I was at one point they thought I might have been Pawnee, and it's like the story kept changing and changing and changing until I was able to go back and find my biological family on the reserve and then find out what my true heritage was. I didn't know what it was. Now, in that documentary that was disclaiming her, the Saskatchewan government had issued a statement that said that no documents of theirs had ever been damaged in a fire or in a flood or anything at any time. Well, both of those things I was told. Every time I went to put in a request for my my documents so from social services, I was told, oh yeah, they were destroyed in a fire, that they can't be found. Or they got flooded in their archives and they're too damaged that they can't be found.
Yeah.
Right. It took my foster sister, who became the director of social services of Southern Saskatchewan. It took her to do an immediate, like an appeal directly to the Minister of Social Services at the time that she was there, took her to do a direct appeal to get my file opened. Because I'd also been told that my files were sealed for 50 years, right? So I got my first copy that I got back from Social Services. It was so redacted I couldn't. It was unreadable. There was no useful information whatsoever because everything was blacked out,
Holy
right? Because
shit.
everything was photocopied. And I showed my sister Rhonda, who was the director of social services. So she's oh, this is unbelievable. She took that copy and showed the minister. So, and he went ballistic. He sent a ball back down to that social worker office, saying there will be an unaltered copy of everything in that file given. for this applicant. And I got that. And when I got it, I was looking through it and I found this certificate of live birth. And there was stuff that was stripped off and annotated with a court order number, right? And on my birth certificate, it had my foster parents, which I never got to, I never went to till I was 11 and a half years old. My foster parents' names were on my birth certificate as if they were my true parents. So documents can be altered. That birth certificate that they found for Buffy St. Marie in that office down in wherever in Maine, right? Okay, number one, why can just a TV show go and get somebody's birth certificate? Because that's not protected information,
Right.
right? Well, how can you go and it should be only the person that's alive, if that's or a family member, go and get that piece of that certificate.
Yep.
And number two, this only goes to show that paper can be changed. Paper can be changed.
Yeah.
So, but I found this copy of certificate of live birth, but everything had been kind of like whited out, and then my parents' names typed in, my foster parents' names typed in. But the bottom of that was signed by a doctor from when I was born in 1963. Right? It's literally signed March 3rd, 1963. I was born March 2nd. Signed by a doctor. And it had the number of my certificate of live birth on the top. So I went through Vital Statistics, Freedom of Information Act. I requested a unaltered copy of that, and I got it back, and I got it was handwriting in my mother's own handwriting. And so with those two copies, that not only refutes what the government of Saskatchewan stated in that documentary, but it was actual proof that documents can be changed.
Yep.
They change documents all the time to
Yep.
hide Native kids.
And in the TRC, this is mentioned repeatedly.
Yes.
And so folks who haven't read it don't know that.
Nowhere in that documentary, and not only that, but the 60 Scoop Society of Canada also issued a statement about how they were at no time ever consulted about Buffy St. Marie.
Yeah,
right?
I know.
Because
It's really
that they
shoddy.
were refuting was they brought up every point that 60 Scoopies are told when they're
Yeah.
trying to find out who they are.
Yep.
Everything,
Yeah.
right? So I'm going to leave it at that, because to me, it's, and the fact that this happened in what, 1950 or 48 or 52,
Yeah.
that that she was given, you know what, that this 60 Scoop started before the 1960s.
Yes, and again, it's in the
Right.
TRC for folks
But
who took the time to read it.
it only picked up steam in the 1960s, right?
Well, the
But
policy changed for sure.
But yeah, and Indigenous kids were stolen or given to white folks to raise way before then.
Yep.
Right, way before then. So it is entirely feasible that she was born, you know, in from an Indigenous parent, in High Pot, Saskatchewan.
Yep.
And given to a white family to be raised. They take her down to the States. They get a birth certificate generated, and it's filed.
I'm with
it
you.
Happens all the time. It's how you hide Indigenous kids.
Yep, 100%.
It's how you hide them.
100%.
Right. So that's my take on that. Whether she is or not, that's up to her.
Yeah.
Whether or not she wants to prove it, that's up to her. Sure. Right. To me, she's got nothing to prove, because that's not a me problem.
Well, and the other part for me is that regardless, let's pretend she is 100% Italian just to make it easy.
She is.
She was adopted by Pie Pot. Exactly. End of discussion. She has lived that way for 60 years. So
even in Lakota, we do have a ceremony.
Yep.
For adoption.
Yep.
It's a formal ceremony. Once you're adopted into the tribe, you are Lakota Epi. Yep. Not anybody else.
Yep.
right? You
The
are.
only thing I would add to everything we agreed to here is that the one other thing I'd like to say is this. I hope there's a major movement in our world to start doing that adoption ceremony to all the grandkids and great grandkids that through the Indian Act, through, the certain sections have been
Yeah.
basically aged out and said, no, you're no longer status. I believe that that is going to cause major identity issues like now and in the future. And we need to deal with that now. And we need to
Well,
start adopting
even
those kids.
the struggle of Indigenous people trying to get their status, and when they know that they are entitled to it,
Yes.
right?
I'm years
And
into
I
this
and
process with
yeah,
my daughter. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Like I literally have a cousin living here in Calgary, that right now he's trying to he's actually applying to the Métis, um uh the Métis to get Métis status, because the INAC refuses to accept that fact that he's First Nation, despite the fact that he lived on the reserve
Yeah.
with his grandmother.
We need to do a class action lawsuit.
Yeah, yeah,
That's what we need
exactly.
to do. We
That's what we
need to
need to
just do
do.
it and just be
Yeah,
like, this is enough.
yeah,
Like, you
enough
have
is
no
enough.
jurisdiction over who is native and who isn't.
Yeah, we should be determining our who
Yeah.
we are, not like for ourselves, not some government quantum formula of like, yeah, whatever.
Right.
Whether you're part one or part two, or like, who cares?
Yep.
Right? How do you
Yep.
live your life?
Yep.
How do you identify? Right?
Yes.
If you are living by the seven sacred laws, right, then then you, to me, you're Indigenous. Like
Yes.
you're Lakota to me,
Yep.
right?
Agreed. Yep.
So whether or not, and it's like, I mean, there was none of us that were ever pure Cree or pure Ojibwe or pure Blackfoot or pure Lakota or Nakota or Dakota or whatever,
Yep.
right? Because we intermarried amongst the different tribes all the time. It's how we kept from being
Yes.
inbred, right?
Yes.
Because believe it, like the elders, they knew what that was. They knew like the dangers of being too close, right?
Yep.
We had before European contact, we had what they called cousin brothers, cousin sisters, which were actually, to this day, you call them first cousins,
Yeah.
right? But they were too close to marry,
Yeah.
right? Cousin brothers, cousin sisters,
Yeah.
right? They're too close to marry. If they're cousins, which means they're further away than that, then they were safe, right? There was still enough genetic,
Distance.
uh, yeah,
Yeah.
diversity that they could, it was safe for them to marry. But it's again issues that the government should keep their nose out of and allow us to determine on our own, right?
Agreed. Yep. Well, thank you. Gosh, what a wonderful interview. I can't thank you enough for every moment of your time, for every personal share, traumatic share as well, but prideful shares. Those made me so happy too. So I
Yeah.
just wanted to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for sharing everything you did today. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
There, I was trying to remember. There was one other thing that I was supposed to bring up that I couldn't remember from earlier in the cast, but um, it mustn't have been like really too important. Other than the fact that the skills I'd learned as a girl, they came back. Oh, and by the way, I do have contact with Mary-Lynn, and she was so happy to find out Karrie-Lynn's back.
Oh, are you going to reunite like in person?
We did. We already have.
Oh my goodness, that's
She was
amazing.
so happy. She was so happy that Karrie-Lynn was back.
Oh my God.
Her
Karrie-Lynn,
best
I'm
friend.
glad she was
Yeah.
alive. I
Yeah.
know
No,
a
her
lot of
best friend. Yeah.
residential school survivors who they
Well,
don't make it.
we lost contact for so many years.
Yep.
So many years.
Yeah.
And the fact that we just, and it was pure coincidence too. It was pure coincidence. And it was such a touchy moment too. It got us both right in the feels. We both cried. Like
Oh,
every did. Oh shit, yeah.
I'm just gonna cry thinking about it.
Yeah, yeah, no, it was a very touching moment. It was. And by the way, I do have biological siblings. that I've found. I haven't met most of them yet. I have a biological sister in Sudbury, Ontario. Her name is Tammy. That I found out about we found out about each other in 2006, and I finally got to meet her in person in 2009 when I went out to her daughter's wedding, and we surprised her.
Amazing. Oh
We
my
surprised
goodness.
her, and it was her daughter that was getting married that had kind of arranged it, right?
Oh.
And I said, okay, I'd love to come to your wedding, but we should surprise your mom. And we did, and it was one of those again, those she wasn't quite sure what to do and everything, and then finally when we hugged, we both started bawling our eyes out.
Oh, that's
Yeah, so
wonderful.
that was good. So and my sister Tammy and I we've she's come here and stayed here for like a month or two at a time. She changed her jobs. She went from an electrician to a pastry chef, and now she's a chocolatier. She owns her own chocolate company, right, called Raven Rising Indigenous Chocolates out of Sudbury, Ontario. So little plug there.
Yeah.
Look it up online. I will warn you that they are pricey because they are a gourmet chocolate.
Oh yeah. No, they're
They
worth it.
s- she starts with Calibo chocolate. Starts the process with Calibo chocolate, which is like the best chocolate anyway.
In
And she
Calgary,
just
yeah.
makes it even better. She just makes it even better
Oh
because
my
she uses
gosh.
indigenous ingredients like blueberries and juniper and oh my God, the flavors are just so wonderful. Yeah, yeah.
That's the gifts we need to give our
Oh my
elders.
God, yes. Like I said, they're pricey. They're about $3 a chocolate, but man, are these like the first time I tasted one of her chocolates, it like I bit into it and my whole mouth exploded with flavor. Just and it was to the point where like I was swallowing hard just to keep up with the saliva that my mouth generated. It was like, oh my God, really mouth watering. Like just incredible.
So
Um,
good.
Wonderful person. I found a brother in Nova Scotia, a brother Michael. Um, and funny thing, when I was in the first 6 years in the Navy, I lived in north end of Dartmouth. And I kept running into people that said, I know somebody, you look like somebody I know. Like I was always running into people up there that said, I know you're not them, but I swear I know somebody that looks exactly like you, like blah blah blah, right?
And here this whole
And it's
time.
like, yeah, okay, so I lived south of Halifax Airport. He lived north of Halifax Airport.
Dang.
There's about a 17-kilometer difference
Yep.
of where we
Yep.
lived.
Yep. Isn't that
She
incredible?
lived there the whole time that I lived in Dartmouth. And so, but you always say, okay, there's always a twin out there, like, that's the doppelganger. But it turned out that was him.
It's
Like
true.
when we found out about him, like I found out about him about 3 years ago, that
Yep.
was him. And when I was Gary and Michael, like that's when I met him online. Like we FaceTimed,
Yep.
or at the time it was Skype, I think. But we Skyped, and when I we connected, and it was like looking on the mirror on your monitor.
No way.
We looked alike like crazy. And what was really weird was that my wife Donna was standing right behind me on my chair, and his sister was standing behind him, and they looked alike.
Oh, that's even
It
funnier.
looked so funny. Like, oh my God. Like, but the difference between me and Michael was that I did not have the Nova Scotia accent that he had, right? It's pretty thick. But it's like it was absolutely amazing. And then from him I found out so my mother had ran away from residential school not long after she got returned there after I was born,
Mm.
and she went looking for her boyfriend back to Ontario, and she must have found him because my sister who was born 15 months, sorry, 18 months after me, we are actually full biological brother and sister.
Okay, so it
We're
was the
not
same
half.
guy. Yeah.
So same guy. So she found him, and she was put up for adoption. So she was actually being able to be adopted. I couldn't. There was
Right.
um, a court block by the band because they knew about me, and so I couldn't be adopted. By the
And
way, when I was taken away, I was actually the chief of the band was my granddad. My granddad was chief of the band at the time when I was
well,
taken away, and that's why they put a block because they wanted me back. And they couldn't find me. That hence why the 5 different foster homes, right? But uh, my mother,
just going to take a moment to have a little bit of rage and a little bit of
oh,
anger at
absolutely.
government policy. And for all of the folks who are non Indigenous that just can't seem to understand these incredible barriers that we've
Oh,
always faced. Yeah.
I just remembered what I was going to say that I was trying to keep in my mind. I said I get people all the time that tell me, "Oh, just get over it. It's history. Just get over it." Um, no, we can't just get over it because we're still living it,
Yes.
right? And for those of you that think that we should get over it, like shame on you.
Shame on them. You
Shame
would
on you.
never tell somebody we're just going to dig up a cemetery with all of your family members because we need the land now, and everybody think that
Right?
would be okay. We would
Yeah,
never do
because
that, but it's
if
done
you're
to
tired of
us.
hearing about our issues, if
Yeah,
you're tired of hearing about our issues, imagine those of us that are living it.
exactly.
We're
Yeah,
tired of it too.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, kind of a little bit got a little bit passionate about that one.
Good, but
But
get it
yeah,
off your chest. You have
yeah.
every right to
But
tell
that's
everybody
but
this.
yeah, we're tired of it too. If
Yeah.
you're tired of hearing of it, we're tired of living it.
Yes.
So stop making us live it,
Yeah.
right?
Right. Hold those politicians to
Oh my
account.
God, hold them
Jeez.
accountable. Hold them accountable because they're the ones that are running everything on your behalf,
Mm-hmm.
right? Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Wow.
But
What it
anyways, as I was getting back, I got 2 more siblings that I haven't found here in Canada.
hmm,
I got a brother named Thomas that was born somewhere in Edmonton, hasn't gone back to get his status card
ah,
to the res, and I have another brother named Chantal, or another sister named Chantal, born in somewhere in Ontario, around the Toronto area, that hasn't gone back to the band office to get their status card. I found Tammy through the band office. We found Michael through the band office
mm,
because they went back to get like claim their status. Um, where my brother Thomas, born in Edmonton, that was where we lost the trail of my mother. And if everybody knows, well, she was supposedly supposed to be traveling to Vancouver. So if everybody knows, the highway from Edmonton to Vancouver through Kamloops is the Canadian Highway of Tears because a lot of our MMIWG 2S T plus sisters that disappeared
yeah.
and became missing happened along that highway. A lot of them.
Yeah.
And we thought, my sister Tammy and I, we thought for years that our mother was part of the MMIW, which is also why I'm pretty passionate about that with the right because I know how it feels
Yeah.
to be a family member thinking that your family member is part of that,
Yeah.
right? So we were happy to find out a couple of years ago from Michael that she wasn't. But she met an American in Jasper on her way to Vancouver, and um, he was up on holidays, and they fell in love, and she went back to down to the States with him, and ended up in Alabama of all places. Like talk about a change, right? The prairies and like Canada down to like Alabama.
Wow.
And she stayed there, and her last two children, who are our half brothers, one's named Jean-Claude, one's named Michael, or not Michael, Derek. She was able to raise them her last two children. She
Oh,
literally had to leave the country to be able to keep her kids.
yeah, it's pathetic. I
To
know people don't get it.
keep her kids, and she had to hide the fact that she was indigenous,
Yeah,
that she was First Nations.
yeah.
So she didn't bring uh, attention to that, but she did tell her sons that she was from White Bear,
Mm.
but uh like didn't like correspond with anybody up in Canada. In fact, Michael and Derek, they didn't even know that they were registered with the First Nation band, right? So it's that's what the policies of your federal government have done to me and my family.
Yeah.
Not only with the 60 scoop and residential school and MMIW and all that. I said, but when I was taken away, it started a chain of events that robbed a whole family,
Yeah.
right? Of everything.
Yeah.
It robbed me of my culture. It robbed me of my language. It robbed me of my ceremonies. It robbed me of my people, my family, my biological family. My siblings are scattered all over Turtle Island, right? And there is no amount of money or monetary recompensation that you can give me that can ever repay me
No.
for the damage that they have done to
Yes.
me and my family.
Yeah. 100%.
Like there's no, not only that, but they can't deny it either.
Yeah.
Like,
There's a paper trail to prove it. I know.
oh God, yes.
It's incredible to me how settlers can sit on the sidelines and know these stories exist, read them in the TRC, read them in the National Inquiry Report, and still be so like disconnected to the gravity of this, and then have the audacity to gaslight it. I just honor
Like
every
like
moment of your
deny, deny,
story.
deny, deny,
Yep,
deny. The
yep,
fact that we finally found unmarked graves and proved that those were missing children,
yeah,
right? That validates that
yeah.
validates everything that we were even saying. Did you know that there's such a thing as child-size handcuffs?
I know it's
I
awful.
knew because I had my left hand handcuffed to the back of my desk. Okay. The only reason
Aw,
why they stopped using them in the school I was at was because the furnace caught fire and they couldn't find the key to get those handcuffs off. And I was a ward of the court. Do you think they're going to let me burn? No. Two nuns had to carry that desk out with me handcuffed to it over to the church. This is in the middle of winter. This is in January, right? We ended up having to be in the church for 3 days. And I was handcuffed to that desk the entire time.
holy
Uh,
shit.
because because they had to get the furnace repaired and fixed and going again before they would let us back into the school. So we lived for 3 days in the church. Um, and I was handcuffed to that the entire time. So when we were finally let back into the school, the nuns went searching. They found the key in the Mother Superior, one of the pockets of the Mother Superior's habits, one of her spare habits. They found the key. So they were finally able to let me go, right? But they quit using it only because they didn't want to be having to be carrying that desk out again.
Not because they had humanity,
Not
empathy,
because they had
sympathy.
humanity,
No,
is
no.
because no, that was too much, but it was too much work for them to be carrying a desk with a student in.
Honestly, these
Like,
mother
so I knew about child size handcuffs because I had to wear them at one point.
that story. I'm speechless. I can't believe this story is like something they would have done. I don't know how you have so little
Residential
humanity.
school survivors like myself, 99% of us probably do not have the would not share that.
Right. Yeah.
They because it is so triggering, even for
Karrie-Lynn.
me, even for me.
Yeah.
But it is so triggering. But there's stories that should be told, that need to
Yes.
be told.
Yes.
And if I have to speak for the rest of my survivor siblings, brothers and sisters, then I will.
Yeah.
Because I decided early on that I was not going to be a victim, right? I'm going to fight. I'm going to be a warrior, and I'm going to survive everything that they throw at me. And that's my mindset.
Yes.
It only takes one of us to speak up. And if that has to be me, okay, then so be it.
I mean, I honestly am so grateful for you, so grateful you'd share that. I need you to know, and I need my listeners to know. I have a friend of mine who went into a community after the TRC hearings and testimonies, and because of being triggered, they lost 90% of their elders. And so, like, Canada doesn't even respect the gravity of how much every single word in these TRC volumes are. These are shares that people said, and to not honor them is the greatest crime. I can't. So every word you've said here, every testimony you gave leading up to this moment, I just want you to know
Probably
I honor
similar is
you.
in those books somewhere.
Yeah.
Probably similar to my story because there's so many similar stories to mine,
Yes.
right? And it's not just me. It's
Yeah.
almost every survivor.
Yes.
Like there are some, and I will admit this, there are some residential school survivors that did not have a bad experience. Some that had a good experience, but most of us did not.
And it doesn't justify
It
cultural
doesn't. No, it
erasure,
doesn't. It
what
doesn't.
all of it.
Nothing
Nothing.
justifies. One
Nothing.
child doesn't justify it.
Nope. Nothing.
One.
Yeah. It's genocide. I just can't even. I honor every moment you've given me here, every
Yeah,
moment you've
it
given.
is a genocide. If you
Yep.
look up the five criteria that the UN has stated that defines a genocide,
Yeah.
Canada has committed all five against its First Peoples.
Yes.
All five,
Yes. It's
up to
incredible.
and including denying
Yeah.
forced sterilization,
Yep.
right? Taking you and raising you in a different culture, right? Like so, indigenous kids being raised in white families instead
Yep.
of within their own culture,
Yep.
right? Every single one,
Yep.
every single criteria. This is a genocide.
Right.
In like prime example. It's the prime example.
What they did to you also is against Geneva Human Rights Conventions. Like the idea that a Canadian can try to justify in any capacity being a proud Canadian. I don't understand it. I just can't, knowing what has happened here and know it continues to happen because of their ignorance, their
Yeah,
willful ignorance.
yeah. And those that deny it are in denial about themselves too.
Yes.
I mean, this is such a great shame.
Yeah.
People around the world say, "Oh, Canada is such a great country," blah 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 blah. You know what? That's only the public persona,
Yes.
right? But Canada is like horrible if you open up that closet
Yeah. 100%.
because it is piled so high with skeletons. It isn't even funny. Like
Agreed.
this is the shame. This is the shame of Canada. And anybody who calls themselves a Canadian and is proud to be a Canadian should be ashamed,
Yes.
right?
Agreed. Yep.
I to the point where, I served the Canadian that the Canadian people. I served my people in the Canadian forces, right? As a veteran, I'm kind of like, um, I would do it again. Like there's no denying I would do it again. However, um, I don't want to call myself Canadian.
Yeah, it's fair.
I don't.
Yep.
I'm from Turtle Island.
Yep.
Uh,
I'm Satu
there's
Dene.
there's no border
Yep.
for me. I'm from Turtle Island. I am Lakota,
Yep.
right? From Turtle Island, not Canadian from Canada.
Yeah. I feel this is so deep in my soul. And I mean, we're, Indigenous cousins.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so I just hope you know, like every word, I felt it, I know it, I
yeah.
feel it, I agree with you at every level. Thank
And
you.
I've had so many people tell you, "Oh, you're playing the race card." I go, "No, I'm
Oh,
not.
fuck
I'm
off.
not. I'm playing the people card.
Yes.
I'm playing the people card."
Humanity.
I said,
Yeah.
they said, "Well, I can't be proud of being white." Yes, you can. You can be proud of being French. You can be proud of being English. You can be proud of Ukrainian or you're Russian or
Yeah.
whatever
Nationality.
your nationality, like background, your
Yeah.
ethnic background is. Yeah,
Yeah.
be proud of that. The fact that you're proud that you're white, you're right. You can't be.
No, that's a white power issue.
Yeah.
That's a white
Yeah,
supremacy issue.
that
Yeah.
is privilege.
Yeah.
That is white privilege,
It's just wild.
right?
Karrie-Lynn, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome.
I'm
And
s-
thank you so much for having me on there.
Oh, of
Uh,
course.
yeah, Pila Maia, which is
Well,
thank you in Lakota.
oh, well, I am going to do my exit now. You're welcome to chime in
Yeah.
at any point in time and add to what I'm saying.
And
Uh,
so I'm just gonna say one little thing first.
sure.
Metekayupie oyate aho,
Mm.
which is we are all related. Truth.
I just knew that was a hand to heart moment. I knew it. Thank you, Masi Cho, Karrie-Lynn, for coming on my podcast and
Hi.
sharing every moment. Thank you. I'm proud that this podcast has the Reconciliation Action Group. I have a Sacred Fire every full moon, and the Indigenous Book Club again is the Two Spirit Stories, Sex, and the Ceremony Behind It All. Alicia Two Bears. These are open to the public. You are more than welcome to come join us, folks, anytime. I'm also proud that this podcast has given solutions and cultural safety training and cultural first aid in order to create that safer space for Indigenous peoples, people of color, those with disabilities, and to us LGBTQ to speak. According to the 2023 Quality of Life Report from the Calgary Foundation, 88% of racialized Calgarians feel uncomfortable or out of place because of their religion, ethnicity, skin color, culture, language, accent, gender, or sexual orientation, which is up from 75% the year before. 84% of racialized Calgarians believe racism exists, while only 66% of non racialized Calgarians do. Thank you to authors Cheryl Ward, Chelsea Branch, and Alicia Fritkin of heretohelp.bc.ca. They have a whole section on what is Indigenous cultural safety and why I should care about it. Their work and those cultural action tools are available, so please support work like this as part of your reconciliation work and settler understanding. I'm just lucky enough to highlight and repeat it here. Internalized racism or lateral violence is another form of violence Indigenous and marginalized folks experience by the structure of oppression and racism posed on these lands. You can go to racialequitytools.org for tons of different resource files, including What is Internal Racism by Donna Bevins. Do's and don'ts for bystander intervention for American Friends Service Committee. So that's afsc.org. They have all sorts of information when you see oppression happening and how to intervene in a constructive way. If you see or experience racism in the Calgary area, you can report it at acttoendracism.ca. They have a new report out that I strongly recommend anybody check out. You can also text them at 587 507 3838. Anyone who follows me on my social medias, I wish they'd take an hour to watch a YouTube video from the anti-racism organizational lead for the city of Calgary on the presentation on the journey of becoming an anti-racism leader. Everyone should be a proud anti-racism leader. Our Calgary Black Lives Matter activists, Taylor McNally and Adora Nofor, are legally being targeted. While the charges have been dropped against Adora, the scars are there forever. And Taylor, tens of thousands of dollars if you can donate. Please go to Stop the Stack YYC and learn more about why it is that oppressed folks get targeted the way they do by the legal system. Indigenous people have been talking about our issues, sharing our reports or sharing our stories and traumas in reports, commissions, and in public hearings, just so it can be regularly disregarded. No more. Honor our words, honor the treaties, listen to politicians and their platforms and policies. If they don't recognize marginalized folks with their gender equity plus, if they're cutting Indigenous education, sex choices, uterus health choices, the pill, gay straight alliances, lack of rights for immigrants,
HRT.
HRT, that's another cut. Migrants, folks with disabilities, know that your vote to that person and that party directly negatively impacts equity deserving groups. Demand that they implement the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action, the recommendations of the Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples, the multiple reports about child welfare reform, violence prevention, and now the 231 calls to justice from the National Inquiry on Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, Girls, Two-Spirit, and Gender Diverse Folks. Provincially in Alberta, the Kenney government created 113 pathways to justice. The new Premier's Council on Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls are supposed to amplify it, but I was just at an outreach session and they sure weren't. Municipally, we have the White Goose Slang Report. Denying these reports is a form of abuse called gaslighting. Our people are experiencing extreme racism and gendered violence in the educational, health, all institutions, with multiple reports that show it. Demand change from election platforms and politicians. If they don't understand colonialism, racism, privilege, sexism, they have zero business running. This should be understood by everyone. And beyond that, beyond local politicians, your community organizations, your sports clubs, your business folks around you, churches, Google articles on how non-Indigenous Canadians can become allies, because there's so many of them. Also, the Calgary Foundation has a great ally toolkit that you can download as well. Stephanie Harp and I had an emergency podcast in the hopes we would write our allies to talk about the crises that we are facing. I implore people to download aboriginalalert.ca or sign up on their email list. You can also go to Missing Children's Society of Canada so that you can start sharing the information about Indigenous kids that do go missing. A statement by the Women's Homelessness .ca, the demand urgent action to protect the lives of Indigenous women, girls, Two-Spirit, and gender diverse people experiencing homelessness. We just recently came out with more data. We now have, from 2023, over 2,000 people that have died from drug poisonings just in Alberta. This is a crisis. And so everyone who has listened to me knows my journey on harm reduction, on naloxone kits and Narcan kits. It is imperative that every status native get those nasal sprays and give them out to community so that we can, not another life, not one more. So if you know someone who is using substances, please do not use alone. If you are using alone, you can contact the National Overdose Response Service at 888-688-NORS for support, or download the Brave or Doors app, as well as there's a lifeguard app. I strongly support Freedom's Path Recovery Society.ca, where you can go donate. They provide free one-on-one addictions counseling services, group treatment in recovery in Calgary, are queer-friendly, and are anti-racist. As many of you have also heard, I've been fully supporting Canada's first 2S LGBTQ addiction recovery center, stonewallrecovery.ca. If you're experiencing emotional distress after anything we talked about today and need to talk, there's the First Nation and Inuit Hope for Wellness helpline at 855-242-3310. It is toll-free and open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you can also text at hopeforwellness.ca. If more related to missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit, for immediate emotional assistance, you can call 844-413-6649. Again, toll-free 24/7 crisis line to support anyone who needs emotional assistance. I wanted to point out the 60 Scoop Indigenous Society of Alberta at ssisa.ca, where you can have a little more sense of community there as well. The Indian Residential School Survivors and Family Hotline is 866-925-4419. Kids Help Phone is 1-800-668-6868. They also have a text where you can go to 686868 with a live chat from 7 p.m. to midnight at Eastern Time. Native Youth Crisis Hotline is 877-209-1266. The LGBTQ youth line no longer exists, but you can text at 647-694-4275 or go to youthline.ca. For non-Indigenous, there are distress center lines in your area, usually a functioning 211, and a new national number of 988. You can also text 988, or you can go to 988.ca for more information. Toronto has an Indigenous-led crisis response pilot led by the Two-Spirited People of the First Nations in partnership with two other organizations. It's an Indigenous-led crisis response team that responds to mental health crises and wellness checks for individuals located within Division 14. If you're in that area, you just call 211 to find out more. You can also go to twospirits.org to find out more. For my American friends, the Two Spirit Identity Strong Hearts helpline.org or 1-844-7-NATIVE or 1-844-762-8466 or 33, sorry. Itgetsbetter.ca itgetsbettercanada.org has tons of resources for 2S LGBTQ. Just a warning for the QT BIPOC. I have seen some of the orgs in Alberta listed, and not all of them practice anti-racism, oppression dynamics, or have Indigenous education. So it might be safer to try the missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, Two-Spirit, and trans line instead. Violence is my everyday reality. Every Indigenous generation has faced it. This is self-care, how I take my power back. It's why I started this podcast, to speak freely without interruption, without tone police, leadership shaming, gaslighting questions, as many people don't want to hear an Indigenous opinion, but sure like to tell us theirs, even if they know nothing about us. Colonialism, the constant surveillance of our people, our protests, our vigils, and our rights. I and many others share it is unacceptable to be racist to us anymore. In fact, learn about being trauma informed to understand a little more about the trauma and how it impacts people. Folks like me are dealing with internalized racism, gatekeeping, and folks that survive off the status quo, folks who are so in their trauma that they stop people from doing the work and deplete personal resources. Internal and external racism is an everyday reality for me, Indigenous peoples, folks with disabilities, QT, BIPOC, and others. Masicho to my ancestors, to my granny and my mom, of what strength looks like through your example. I want to thank my dad for teaching me to be strong and blunt, my stepmom for showing me a proud Austrian culture with her roots, teaching me to be a proud Calgarian. I want to say thank you to my husband for producing and editing this show, on top of being my husband, my childhood friend, father of our child, and support down my journey of the Red Road. He has witnessed decades of sexism and racism. And to our child, who we are blessed to learn from daily, we are honored you chose us. You give me daily accountability to be a better and stronger person. I hope my daughter and my family will be proud in the future of us trying to discuss these present day issues. I honor the Blackfoot as the elders and members have been so kind to me on my Red Road journey. Elder Red Crane taught me how to pronounce my spirit name in Blackfoot, and Leonard Kenny taught me how to pronounce it in Satu Dene. My humblest apologies to the Blackfoot and Dene elders and language keepers as I try to learn proper pronunciation. My Patreon account is Native Calgarian, where you can pledge and support. Thank you, previous donors, for showing your support. If you value listening or watching and can afford to give, thank you. For those who cannot afford to give, I'd love to hear from you at nativeyyc@gmail.com, where you can send in your comments or questions. I also have a YouTube channel that you can go and subscribe and see our guest's lovely face and sometimes their puppy ears. Go to Native Calgarian for the latest podcasts and pin posts on social media.
Oh, and that's that specific guest,
Yeah.
right? They're if you ever meet them on the street, come up and say hi to Auntie Karrie. And my pronouns are they, them, she, her.
Amazing. Thank you. And that's just such a great touch grass moment. I say a lot of dark things and we see on media, social media. So just that touching grass is just an expression to reconnect to the world that's not focused so much on our screens. I'd love to hear about yours, but if you see Auntie Carrie, please go say hello. And I want to end by giving side eye to those Calgary rabbits. You're lucky I'm not tradish. And my beautiful cousin would respond, or you'd be in my dish. Thanks,
Yeah,
folks.
exactly. A tradish dish.
A tradish dish.